Chapter 161. Extraordinary Wisdom Blossoms. 16 Strange Fists. Strike. In Feng Linger's eyes, both Duan Yun and Xining from Yuzhu Villa seemed to possess an enigmatic self-confidence. Especially Duan Yun, his approach to practicing these cryptic cultivation techniques as if they were nothing, as though he genuinely believed he could master them. According to Xining, all those awe-inspiring cultivation techniques he practiced were cultivated in exactly that way. Hearing this, Feng Linger was stupefied. Particularly at this time, Duan Yun got so engrossed in practicing his punches that he stripped off his shirt, revealing a muscular upper body with well-defined lines. She found herself staring, transfixed. Won't he go mad? Practicing like that? Feng Linger inquired while watching Duan Yun practicing shirtless. She knew that some low-tier individuals in the martial world, with no masters to guide them, could only fumble through all sorts of dubious secret books on their own. Such people either died from a disrupted flow of true qi or went mad from cultivation deviation, with the unluckiest ones becoming big medicine for other martial artists to consume. There's a saying in the martial world, whoever practices martial arts is bound to go mad, typically referring to these very situations. It was exceedingly challenging for the powerless, low-tier Jianghu people to climb up the ranks. This is why sects and clans proliferate throughout the martial world. If someone has a powerful and non-maddening martial art, it would naturally draw followers. Just take her Red Frost Sword Palace, where every year numerous people exhaust their wealth, even resorting to fighting their rivals, just to compete for an entry spot. Of course, now and then someone would comprehend divine skills from a pile of secret books that were either dubious or incomprehensible, but those were the ones with heaven-defying luck. However, to her knowledge, Duan Yun had only begun practicing martial arts for less than a year. How many times had he defied the heavens by now? Thus, she continued to harbor doubts about such claims. Her mother once said that the better-looking the man, the more likely he is to deceive, and old demon Duan, with his handsome appearance and solid pectoral muscles, might just be hoodwinking Xining. She certainly wasn't going to be fooled that easily. As Xining watched while eating walnuts, she asked, "Do you think he's gone mad?" Feng Linger continued to observe Duan Yun's body and replied, "He seems both sane and insane." Indeed, from her perspective, most of the time Duan Yun appeared perfectly normal, just as Xining described him, even a bit naive considering his brief tenure in the martial world, which might be related to his affinity for playing the young hero. After all, what normal person enjoys taking people to a cellar to heal them, not just once but twice, giving them a series of chilling touches each time? Feng Linger considered Duan Yun overly self-confident, blind confidence at that. If Duan Yun knew her thoughts, he would surely argue. Although confident, his confidence was clever, never blind. Like with this jade slip containing a fist technique, he reviewed it from day to night before beginning to practice. He had to admit the difficulty of deciphering this fist technique was second only to the tadpole script he had cut from that crazy thunder cultivator. Duan Yun always felt it was as if translated from a unique language, making it somewhat awkward to understand. Like previous times, he approached it with measure, skipping over words or phrases he didn't understand and attempting to comprehend them later. Having practiced so many martial arts, Duan Yun was now adept at this. Anything temporarily baffling, he, with his one-in-a-million talent for cultivation, would surely comprehend. Context clues and filling in the blanks, he had been learning this ever since elementary school. Now, having completed the blanks, he began attempting punches. Duan Yun had already discovered that the fist technique consists of 15 movements. Though a novice at fist forms with the circulation of true qi within his body, even his very first punch was executed with impressive force. Duan Yun was fairly satisfied with his progress, yet Xining, the great boxer, furrowed her brows slightly. In her eyes, Duan Yun's fist technique was fierce but lacked inner strength. It was rash and not condensed. It could be said that he hadn't even crossed the threshold of boxing. His impressive presence was entirely because his true qi was already strong and vigorous. It was clear she had overestimated him. After all, a person who was a dual masters of sword and saber and even had a decent finger technique could not be expected to also have an extraordinary innate talent for boxing. That was simply unreasonable. In the end, It was Duan Yun's previous outrageous performances that gave rise to many thoughts about his abilities. But as an extremely rare boxing prodigy, she knew well that compared to swordsmanship, boxing was an entirely different field, and those sword and finger techniques would not only fail to assist in integration, but would also become an impediment. This is because a person's habits often affect their receptivity to new things. Although Feng Linger had never practiced boxing, she was, after all, a scion of a prominent family and had some discernment. She, too, felt that Duan Yun's boxing was still a distance away from even a beginner's level, which showed that even if one desperately wanted to learn boxing, there was still a certain threshold to meet. As time passed, the two women lost interest in the progress of his boxing, focusing solely on his physical body. Duan Yun also felt that something was amiss. He had clearly understood everything, yet his boxing was neither invincible nor showing significant progress, which ran counter to his expectations. Although Duan Yun was thinking this way, his fists did not stop. He continued to practice boxing according to the fist charts he had understood. Suddenly, his extraordinary wisdom flashed, and he had a moment of insight. The next moment, he started practicing the moves even faster. Actually, he was not familiar with these 15 moves of boxing, but in order to increase his speed, he no longer cared about accuracy, he just needed the gist. Hence, in the eyes of Feng Linger and Shining, Duan Yun, who suddenly sped up and disregarded quality for quantity, seemed like someone who, after half a day of fruitless martial arts practice, suddenly gave up and vented their emotions. It's common for practicing martial arts to lead to emotional instability, especially with these kinds of obscure cultivation techniques. At the same time, significant emotional changes are also signs of madness. Shining was just about to slow him down when the situation suddenly reversed. They saw the air around Duan Yun abruptly condense, forming layers of ripple-like patterns. Then Duan Yun gathered his fist, charged it powerfully, and then unleashed it. It was as if an invisible fuse connected and ignited these ripple-like patterns. With a boom, a surging sound of an explosion suddenly erupted, and several ripples exploded at once, carrying along a howling fist shadow that smashed into the courtyard wall. The wall trembled, and a penetrative fist imprint was left on it. Shining and Feng Linger were startled. Especially the boxer Shining, her beautiful eyes widened, not even sparing Duan Yun's pectorals a glance, her facial expression even more surprised than Feng Linger's. Because she understood boxing better. Boxing places importance on both fist power and fist intent, and Duan Yun's punch actually contained a hint of fist intent. It's known that fist intent is something that appears only when boxing reaches a state of perfection. From power to intent, this is the most fundamental rule of boxing. Yet Duan Yun seemed to have broken this rule. Momentarily, he hadn't even crossed the threshold. Yet this punch possessed fist intent. It was as if he had suddenly skipped the stages of beginner, proficiency, and mastery, his boxing becoming perfectly refined in an instant, giving birth to fist intent. This is like a baby who can't even crawl just after birth but suddenly learns to run on his hands. This completely defies the common sense of boxing.
Eva understood.
As long as I practice fast enough, the 15-road chi fist can merge into several paths, or even just one. Duan Yun's extraordinary wisdom shimmered as he spoke. Just now, when he was continuously practicing his punches, he found that as long as each strange fist was practiced quickly enough and his true chi followed and circulated quickly enough, even the true chi of two different strange fists running together could transform the previous moves into a storage form, from which contained power would explode out later. Indeed, this is the martial arts of men. One must store up energy fiercely to release it fiercely. Merging the 15-road chi fists together, Shining and Feng Linger's eyes widened. Not just them. The monkey face and chicken down in the courtyard underground perked up their ears, almost wishing they could take notes. This old demon Duan really had great talent. In such a short time he had realized this step. You must know, they had also imprinted the fist technique from the jade slip and hadn't noticed this point at all. Duan Yun made progress with his boxing, so he pursued his advantage. Not enough. Not enough. Duan Yun swung his fists, sweating profusely, and roared. His muscles quivered and his true chi circulated at high speeds, almost chaotically. As long as the intent is there, who cares if the practice is perfect or not? 4 paths. Strange. With a boom, for ripples of air waves blossomed, turning into roaring fist power. 7 paths. 9 paths. Strange. Not enough. Not enough. 12 paths. Strange. For a time, the courtyard echoed with thunderous booming noises. The wall that had been hit by the fist imprints was now smashed into tatters. The fist power roared and the wild trees outside were blasted into pulp. The chicken and monkey face hiding underground were dumbfounded, feeling as if they were in the middle of a cave-shaking session with good brothers. How long had it been, and why did the boxing suddenly become thunderous? Is it necessary to be this fast, this terrifying? Shining and Fenglinger were dumbfounded, especially Shining, who felt like all the rules she had followed in boxing practice were shattered by the guy before her. Shattered to pieces. Boxers resonate with one another. She could even feel the ferocity in Duan Yun's fist intent, and the true chi inside her body became invigorated. Was this the work of someone who had only studied boxing for a day? No, that's wrong. That's wrong. Extraordinary wisdom. I command you to continue to comprehend. Break for me. The dust in the yard had been floating up and had never settled, while Duan Yun continued to shout inside. Shun Ying's back was covered in cold sweat because she could feel that Duan Yun's fist intent was still growing. This wasn't just random shouting. The speed of this fist intent was growing faster than Duan Yun's chest muscles were quivering. What would this growth become eventually? Shining didn't know, Fenglinger didn't know, and the chicken and monkey face hidden underground didn't know either. At this moment, their expressions were somewhat consistent, all somewhat stunned. Just like when the Murong brothers first watched Duan Yun practice with the blade, it was like looking at the Jade Emperor. 15 paths. Strange. At this moment, Duan Yun's roar reached its peak, the speed of his true chi's turbulence inside him reached the limit, and some, along with the breaking body sword energy, even overflowed while his fist intent also reached its peak. The 15-road chi fist connected in one. Even he could hardly control it. With a boom, the most expensive door of the mountain villa turned into fluttering shreds, the surging air waves making his hair dance wildly. After one punch was thrown, Duan Yun stood still as if his body was hollowed out. That punch just now, he had released everything that could have been released from his body. Even if he wanted to let out something more, there was nothing left. At this moment, Shin Ying and Fenglinger saw, but Duan Yun did not. Behind him, a dark and hazy Dharma image emerged. Not quite human, not quite godlike. This practice of boxing even brought out a Dharma image. For a moment, Shin Ying, who had practiced boxing for many years, suddenly felt the world so strange. Is this unrivaled strange boxing inherently magical? Or is this guy here a freak? Shin Ying didn't understand, and naturally, Fenglinger understood even less. At this point, Duan Yun, with the Dharma image behind him, suddenly yelled again. Still not enough. Still not enough.
I've understood.
I've understood again. This is the real deal. This is the real deal. What had he understood now? What's real and what's not? Shin Ying and the others even felt that everything in front of them was fake, like a ridiculous dream. Shin Ying and Fenglinger on the ground, the monkey face and chicken underground. The 4 of them had never stopped wearing expressions of shock on their faces. To tell the truth, on this night of perfect moonlight, they were already a bit tired of being shocked. Because of Duan Yun's fierce boxing and crazed shouting, Little Gray and the golden snub-nosed monkey had already hidden far away, while Panda Dubai was serious, even mimicking Duan Yun's boxing stance. Chapter 162. Dharma Image, Primordial Spirit, Instant Refinement of Teeth. I can't believe this is real. At this moment, Duan Yun, with his extraordinary wisdom fully unleashed, not only blasted out the 15-road chi, but also sensed something even more bizarre. He discovered that the 15-road chi fist could actually stimulate emotions. Now he felt extremely strong emotions, a twisted agony of love and hate intertwined. Or was it the profound sorrow that should have remained hidden deep in his heart? They were growing continuously, even about to materialize and merge into his fists. At that time, Duan Yun suddenly looked at Shining. Shining and Feng Linger both felt their hearts tremble. After Duan Yun had thrown his punch, even his trousers had been ripped apart by the bulging chi force. His muscular lines were now clearly defined, added to which were beads of sweat scattered over his skin, creating an indescribable beauty. Their eyes drifted up and down over his chest muscles, not knowing where to rest. Old demon Duan like this, so exciting. Xiao Ying, as a female boxer, do you feel it? Duan Yun suddenly asked. Shining was both nervous and confused as she replied, Felt what? The fist is the thought, the fist is the emotion. They are all real, they are becoming alive. Can't you feel it? Said Duan Yun. Faced with Duan Yun's mad raving, Shining could sense his fist intent still transforming, as if it were about to enter an indescribable state. This was a fatal temptation for any boxer, perhaps even more so than if she suddenly stripped off her clothes, released her restraints, and put on stockings. It was so tempting that she wanted to follow into that state but couldn't keep up. So all she could do was to look on with a slightly pained and confused expression. It seems your strength is still not enough, murmured the Dharma image behind Duan Yun as it continued to fluctuate. Ordinarily, if Duan Yun dared to say her strength as a female boxer wasn't enough, she would have punched him long ago. But at this moment, Shining didn't, because what Duan Yun said was the truth, at least in terms of the intensity of the fist intent in this state. She truly wasn't strong enough. I can't feel it. Why? I am clearly 1 in 10,000 a boxing prodigy. At this moment, Duan Yun looked at his own fists and said crazily, Actually, I also want to know what this is. Feng Linger looked at his crazed expression and asked nervously, What are you going to do? The crazed look on Duan Yun's face disappeared in an instant, and he said calmly, I need to sleep. He was tired. To understand the effect of these fists filled with intense thoughts and emotions, it seemed necessary to rest and gather strength. He truly had not an ounce of energy left. And so, right in front of Shining and Feng Linger, bringing along that inhuman godlike Dharma image, he went to sleep. In the blink of an eye, Duan Yun's even breathing could already be heard from within the room. Shining and Feng Linger were both stunned. Just a moment ago, his pectorals were swelling, his face was crazed, as if about to melt someone, and then the next moment he was asleep, sleeping peacefully. Feng Linger couldn't help asking, Does he always sleep this well? Shining said blankly, I've never slept with him, so I don't know. It was a bizarre feeling, like a mighty martial artist battling both gods and men, then suddenly seeing the threshold to the next realm. His face flushed with mania and excitement. At such times, anyone would press on, striving with all their might to see what the next realm looked like. But this incredible man was peculiar because he suddenly wanted to sleep, so he cast everything aside and went to sleep, or perhaps he suddenly remembered he hadn't taken a dump today, so he went to do just that. Yes, that's the feeling old demon Duan gave people. Feng Linger couldn't help but speak again. Is he mad or not? As a martial artist, who could resist such temptation and suddenly go to sleep, if not a madman? But surely one cannot be considered a madman just because he wants to sleep? Feng Linger didn't want to think anymore. She feared that thinking further would drive herself mad first, especially seeing that Duan Yun had already fallen asleep, his strange Dharma image still looming. There was an unreal feeling. Feng Linger, scared of going insane, went to sleep in a daze. Shining, as a female boxer, didn't sleep. How could she sleep at a time like this? She stood in the dent created by Duan Yun's fist power, carefully feeling the residual warmth and fist intent, strangely reminiscent of how goddess-catcher Lang Yiming frenziedly sniffed his personal clothing at Duan Yun's old house. Duan Yun had fallen asleep. He had just practiced his boxing and unleashed all he could with his fist power, so he was very tired and fell asleep quickly. But tonight he had a dream. In his sleep, Duan Yun couldn't see the Dharma image that had yet to dissipate, which kept gazing at him. The next moment, 3 lotuses appeared above the head of the Dharma image, and its hands, like true chi, entered his head. As a result, Duan Yun's dreams became even clearer. Husband, the Xuanxiong gang is at the door. What should we do? The next moment, a flat-chested woman entered the room and said frantically. Duan Yun's face showed confusion, thinking, have I married Shadowing? Then two big-chested twins and a flamboyant young girl also entered. Did I marry the Shadow Sisters as well? Why is the younger sister here too? In his dream, Duan Yun didn't know he was dreaming, only felt it was strange, but quickly accepted the reality. He had married in Lishui City, taking 4 beautiful brides in succession. Unfortunately, as a gynecologist whose business was not doing well, he couldn't even afford the protection fee. And now, early in the morning, the Xuanxiong gang had come to collect a debt. There was a thud as the door was kicked in, and a group of ferocious people whose palms resembled bear paws entered. Chapter 163. Duan Yun, today is the day you pay your debts. If you can't, these bear paws of mine need only break off your 2 hands. The leader was a somewhat familiar-looking man, his cruelty palpable with every word he spoke. Duan Yun tensed up immediately and said, no, these are the hands I use to take pulses. Without them, how can I practice the medical practitioner's compassionate heart? At this moment, Shadow Ying's wife suddenly stepped behind him with a kitchen knife in hand. Her eyes filled with despair, and yelled, you can't touch him! Alongside her, the twins and the flower stem girl also shielded him. Wait, medical practitioner's compassionate heart, what else is there in my life's goals? Just then, Duan Yun had a sudden flash of inspiration, his extraordinary wisdom kicking in. Wait, extraordinary wisdom. I know now. This is a dream, right? Husband, run, we'll hold them off. His wives took him to the back door, crying. Ha ha ha. Useless trash. Actually letting your own. Before the Xuanxiong gang disciple could finish his sentence, a pop 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 sound rang out, like frying beans. The heads of 5 or 6 Xuanxiong gang disciples suddenly had bullet holes, white smoke billowing from them, and immediately, their bodies slumped, never to rise again. Charge! The leader of the Xuanxiong gang, startled, ordered more disciples from behind to move forward, but then a couple of smoking eggs flew over. The next moment, a few loud bangs were heard. The last wave of Xuanxiong gang disciples were blown into the air. Some even ended up hanging by their butts on the crooked tree in the backyard. In the sight of that leading Xuanxiong gang disciple, a team of muscular men in combat attire approached Duan Yun, lifting a powerful firearm, and one of them raised his right hand to his eyebrow, performing a peculiar salute to Duan Yun. Sorry, Mr. Duan. We arrived a step too late. Ah? The Xuanxiong gang disciple, whose butt had just been blown apart, wore a stupefied expression. Just as stunned was the Dharma image that stood hands plastered to Duan Yun's head. At this moment, Duan Yun held Shadow Ying's hand, comforting her not to worry. Mr. Duan, the Flying Tiger team is fully ready, awaiting your orders. Duan Yun commanded. These are all evil demons and terrorists, spare none. Yes, sir. Then came a rattle of sweeping gunfire. The originally ferocious Xuanxiong gang was turned into a sieve, dying with their eyes wide open. At this instant, the Dharma image that appeared on Duan Yun dimmed slightly, but it still pressed on Duan Yun's head, black aura once again infiltrating his sea of consciousness. The bodies of the Xuanxiong gang disciples were swiftly taken away, and the ground was cleaned. But only the body of the Xuanxiong gang leader lay there, unmoved by several men. Duan Yun walked over, finally remembering who this was. Isn't this Wang Li, the first bad guy he had killed? This guy's grave grass should already be several meters high. Extraordinary wisdom didn't deceive me. This is indeed a dream. This dream is even more bizarre. Only to see the expression of shock on the face of this riddled corpse, mouth agape. His body seemed rooted to the ground, impossible to pull out. Just then, a sobbing wind whistled out from the corpse's mouth, the temperature of the entire backyard dropping slightly. There's something. Suddenly, Shadow Ying's wife screamed. Then Wang Li's corpse's mouth moved, and a head squeezed out. This head had long horns, its long beard transparent and soft, turning out to be a small dragon head. With a snap, the dragon head burst through the mouth and flew out, revealing itself to be a small dragon, only to see the small dragon grow as soon as it met the wind, and in a mere moment, it became as large as a mountain, hovering over the courtyard and obscuring the sun. At the same time, the Dharma image that appeared on Duan Yun's body also took on a strange dragon shape. In the dream, the dragon's frosty scales, golden eyes, and sharp dragon whiskers like swords pointing to the sky all indicated the danger it posed. "Mr. Duan, this thing is huge," said the leader of the team, his face filled with confusion. "First, withdraw and find cover." "Yes, sir." Extraordinary wisdom. Rotate. Under everyone's gaze, Duan Yun let out a loud shout, and a red silk ribbon flew out from the cellar in the backyard, encircling his body. Immediately after, 2 flaming wheels rolled forward and landed at Duan Yun's feet. Then, Duan Yun stepped onto the fire wheel and flew into the sky. When everyone's eyes moved past the burning flames and saw his body again, he was holding a burning long spear. Roar! The giant dragon roared, its breath so powerful that it shattered the roof tiles, its aura towering. With a whoosh, the red silk suddenly expanded, turning into a flowing river, heading towards the dragon's body. In an instant, the dragon's body was bound. The next moment, the dragon's head revealed a shocked expression. This was because it saw Duan Yun standing on the fire wheel, holding the flame gun, suddenly taking on a form with 3 heads and 6 arms. The opponent was clearly so small, yet it brought great fear to the dragon, as if it had encountered a natural predator. The dragon-shaped Dharma image also showed a fearful expression. In the dream, the giant dragon roared, broke free from the red silk, but at that moment, the burning wind and fire will had already rolled over, lifting up dragon scales. In the next instant, the spear stirred violently, and the dragon whimpered, as dragon blood rained down. The last image the dragon saw of Duan Yun was him suddenly rushing forward, after which, it found its dragon tendon had been pulled out. Roar! Following the massive mournful cry, the dragon in the sky suddenly lost support and fell downward limply. The Dharma image on Duan Yun's body dimmed a bit more. At this moment, Duan Yun suddenly opened his eyes and faced the Dharma image. Both were startled. In the dream, Duan Yun had detected something strange about the dream and didn't expect it to be this Dharma image-like thing causing trouble. Startled, the Dharma image began to sway, looking as if it wanted to escape from Duan Yun's body. "Little you, catch it." The netherworld jade sword Immortal Dharma appeared, and in an instant, the strange Dharma image was completely locked by the sword chi silk. Its expression panicked. Duan Yun marveled, saying, "I didn't expect this Dharma image I cultivated this time to be naturally sentient. You know, even for a Dharma image, this young hero likes women, beautiful women. It's a pity you aren't one. What this young hero dislikes are evil heretics." Refine instantaneously. Duan Yun's sea of consciousness rotated, and little you suddenly expanded, causing the not-human not-godlike Dharma image to instantly become blurry and even changed its form. Some time later, deep in the mines, a stone coffin was blasted open, and a decrepit Taoist corpse climbed out. On his head, 3 pitch-black lotuses ascended, one of which was rapidly withering away. 3 flowers lady. On the back of the corpse, a woman with 3 lotus flowers tattoo appeared faintly. "Taoist! Taoist! My 3 flowers primordial spirit! My primordial spirit! It's gone!" With a boom, one of the lotuses completely dissipated, leaving only 2 swaying left and right with the old Taoist corpse. Chapter 164. Old Demon Duan's strange boxing is poisonous. The next day, when Duan Yun emerged from his house, Xining and Fenglinger were shocked once again. Their shock was not only due to the fact that the Dharma image was still behind Duan Yun, but also due to the appearance of the Dharma image. The Dharma image from yesterday was neither human nor divine, giving off a sense of mystery and obscurity, while today it had transformed into a woman. A girl with twin ponytails. The girl was dressed in a body-hugging cheongsam with a pattern resembling blue and white porcelain, with semi-transparent white stockings adorning her voluptuous and slender legs, exuding an elegant charm. A cheongsam-clad boxer with twin ponytails. This was the role Duan-Yun envisioned for this Dharma image. Sorry, she's not fully trained yet, Duan-Yun explained. The conscious Dharma image which disrupted his dreams yesterday had been merged and refined with Little Yu's body and spirit, ultimately transforming into the second Dharma image that Duan-Yun desired. However, the training was not yet complete. Although she was now obedient to Duan-Yun, she still couldn't be retracted at will. Meaning, this twin ponytail girl Dharma image would temporarily be floating behind him. Watching Duan-Yun accompanied by the Dharma image on his way to the latrine, Feng Linger shivered and said, "They say old demon Duan can easily emasculate men. But now it seems he doesn't spare his Dharma images either? Yesterday, the Dharma image was so chaotic they couldn't tell its gender, and by default out of habit since ugly beings were regarded as male, they subconsciously thought of it as male. Yet, in just one night, this Dharma image had been trained into a beautiful girl." Shen Ying's expression grew serious as she said, "There is something I must clarify." Subsequently, as soon as Duan-Yun stepped out of the latrine, he saw Xiaodoing waiting for him outside. "I have a question for you," said Shen Ying with a stern look. "What's the question?" Duan-Yun replied earnestly. "Where can I buy clothes like your Dharma image is wearing?" Hearing this question, Feng Linger, who was following behind, was utterly baffled. "Is this really the serious matter you wanted to clarify?" Duan-Yun earnestly explained, "That's a cheongsam. You probably cannot buy it for now." "Then wait. Let me take notes. I'll have to find a tailor to get it custom-made when I have time." Saying that, Shen Ying took out paper and pencils and began to sketch the Dharma image's cheongsam. After finishing the drawing, Shen Ying felt very satisfied and couldn't help but remark, "The slit goes up to here. Really suitable for boxing practice." When it comes to boxing, as a boxer herself, she placed it at as high a priority as her attire and became even more focused on Duan-Yun. Last night, she had perceived much of Duan-Yun's fist intent, had an epiphany, but just missed the mark. In fact, regarding the understanding that the fist is the thought, the fist is the emotion, Duan-Yun was also eager to know the outcome. So he decided to have breakfast first. Person must not skip meals. While Duan-Yun was having his breakfast, the monkey face underground was eating peaches. He, like Shen Ying, was eager to know what new insights this fellow would come up with. Old Demon Duan's comprehension of boxing was incredibly fast. Would he train himself mad and die within these 2 days? Because of this, the monkey face underground was even more reluctant to leave than Rat Leader, who had to leave the cave to eat breakfast. When Duan-Yun finished his breakfast, the momentous time came again. Especially when Duan-Yun stripped off his clothes as usual, both women's eyes were glued to him. It wasn't just the two of them. Zhu and LV were also stealthily watching. Unlike their focus on Duan-Yun's physique, Panda Dubai was more pure, solely concentrating on Duan-Yun's boxing. The fist is speed. This time, Duan-Yun started with intensity, swiftly linking the 15-road chi fist together. His body was filled with swirling true chi. Even though the flow wasn't entirely accurate, the intent was what mattered. Simultaneously, the Dharma image of the girl in the cheongsam also started punching, and in Shen Ying's eyes, she held the posture of a grandmaster. Except she moved too quickly, following Duan-Yun in fast motions, their forms overlapping and becoming indistinct. The emotions, entwined with love and hatred, surged rapidly with the fist intent, engulfing Duan-Yun in an indescribable whirlwind of feelings. He suddenly understood the emotions that Murong had gone through after several unforgettable bitter experiences of waiting for death. Love and hatred formed too sharp a contrast. While waiting for death, one's body might feel overgrown with moss, while the heart remains hollow, bearing empty, hate-filled stabs of pain, like thorns. No, it was even more severe. At this moment, he experienced an unspeakable sense of loneliness, as if an extreme hatred turned into a profound, desolate emptiness. His soul seemed to become intangible and nebulous, and he felt suffocated to death if he didn't do something. So he punched out. Let all of it burst forth. 15 Road Chi.
No.
This is beyond the 15 road. Extreme hatred. Seeing this, Shuning knew his fist intent had hit its peak and was about to erupt. She quickly reminded him, be careful with the house. Yesterday's practice had already destroyed the villa's front gate. If Duan Yun were to go all out again today, they might lose their dwelling entirely. Her reminder reached Duan Yun's ears, but by then, it was too late for him to change the direction of his fist power. The fist intent was like a flood breaking through a dam. 16 Road Chi. Extreme hatred fist intent. Release. Consequently, Duan Yun's downward-moving fist continued its course, unleashing terrifying fist power and intent towards the ground. With a crash, the dreadful fist power pierced the ground, and had Yuzhu Villa been a large jar, it would have been thoroughly stirred and shattered by the vigorous and robust fist power and shook violently. The monkey face hiding underground, thinking it was the safest place, in just an instant, felt the whole underground boiling. The terrifying fist power bore down like a giant wave, and Monkey Face could only muster force to resist. A pitch-black hole nearly formed along his body, created by the ferocious fist power. Even without being directly hit by the fist, the residual fist winds made it hard for the Monkey Face to breathe. After this punch was thrown, Shuning advanced instead of retreating, wanting to immerse herself in the unique intent of this punch like a crazed woman. The surging fist power struck her, causing her clothes to rustle in the wind, and the fist power true chi within Shuning also felt this unique fist wind, becoming active as well. The next instant, Shun Ying's face changed drastically, and she exclaimed, "Something's not right." Almost at the same time, her body was suddenly wrapped in silver-white threads, forming a close-fitting silk armor. No, that's still not enough. She even flew towards Feng Linger behind her, enveloping her as well. Because at this moment, Feng Linger's entire demeanor had changed. It became empty, dim, soul-destroying, even faintly exuding a kind of fiery madness, like a volcano about to erupt. As the white silk wrapped around her, her condition was slightly alleviated. Ah! Break! Break! No, it's not just about extreme hatred. There must also be the supreme heroic spirit. Break! 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 The fist power penetrated layer by layer, blasting a deep hole in the ground before it finally stopped. The overflowing fist wind scattered around, forming a gray-white airflow. Duan Yun climbed out of the pit and laughed boisterously. Ha ha ha! Exhilarating! Damn it! That was exhilarating! With that punch, the desolate emotions of extreme hatred combined with his spirit of righteousness had been fully expelled by him, making him feel extraordinarily elated. He felt that everything in the world had suddenly become beautiful. Even walking felt light as if stepping on clouds, and he even found Shadow Ying's flat chest to be a different kind of indescribable beauty. Monkey Face, not having been fully struck by the punch and being a master himself, did not suffer injuries. He easily climbed out of the hole and met Ji Siken, who was visibly shocked. "Monkey, are you all right?" asked Ji Siken. "All right? How could I not be?" replied Monkey Face. During their conversation, tears of desolation silently fell from his eyes. "I'm more than all right. I've even learned old Demon Duan's fist technique." Speaking thus, while his tears of desolation flowed, he swiftly displayed the 16 strange fist, with surprising speed. At that moment, old Demon Duan's fist intent and moves were imprinted into his mind all at once. Ji Siken suddenly grabbed his hand and asked, "Why the hell are you crying and scratching your chest if you're all right?" Monkey Face looked down and realized with a jolt that his chest had been torn open, bleeding profusely. Suddenly, Ji Siken remembered the story of Dao's son practicing martial arts, and how everyone in his family learned it overnight as if by a contagious plague. Could it be? Just then, Monkey Face suddenly looked at him and asked, "Old chicken, do you understand the meaning of life?" Overcome with shock, Ji Siken replied, "I don't know. You'll know soon." Suddenly, Monkey Face unleashed a barrage of punches, bombarding Ji Siken with them. Ji Sikhen, ready for the assault, shrank his body down instantly, stood on one leg in a golden rooster stance, his hands alternating, and withstood the punch. Where others' golden rooster stance would be unstable, Ji Sikhen developed a clever force, bouncing on the single leg to dissipate the ferocity of the punch. However, in the next moment, his expression too turned desolate and soul-destroying, as he clutched his chest and said, "Indeed, what is the meaning of life? If anyone were to come to the graveyard this early in the morning and witness two grown men shedding tears of desolation while clutching their chests and saying such things, they would surely think they had encountered ghosts. Ghosts wallowing in self-pity and contemplating suicide." In the next instant, the desolate and soul-destroying expressions on Monkey Face and Ji Sikhen's faces shifted, and they simultaneously declared, "I want to be a hero." This caught them both off guard. Immediately, the desolate expressions and the righteous demeanor of aspiring to be heroes fused together on their faces. No, it wasn't a fusion, but rather half on the left side of the face and half on the right. For a moment, both of them felt as if they had two selves. One desolate and lonely unto death, the other raging and yearning to become a hero. Monkey Face suddenly shouted, "No good! We've fallen into a trap. We've been tainted by old demon Duan's fist power." Ji Sikhen said in panic, "Yes, there's a problem, we're tainted." At this time, their desolate expressions and the violent hero-longing expressions blended into one, then split apart and blended once again. If you looked closely, the two men seemed to have three different faces, constantly changing, appearing quite eerie. Monkey Face suddenly declared, "I'm going to kill my father." Ji Sikhen said, "Weren't you the one who castrated him? I must kill him. Merely castrating him is not enough to satiate my hatred. If I don't kill him, I'm no hero. If I don't, it's me who will die, and I don't want to live." Monkey Face's face was a mix of desolation and madness. Seemingly infected by this, Ji Sikhen said, "I need to kill Gu Daoist, the Gu Daoist of heavenly human Tao. He tainted my mother while pursuing his Tao. How can I be a hero if I don't kill him?" Monkey Face screamed, "Why didn't you say this earlier? I was afraid. I didn't say it when Rat Leader was around, and when Rat Leader disappeared, I was even more afraid. And now, I'm not afraid anymore. To be a hero, I'm going to kill Gu Daoist and his entire family." Almost at the same time, both of them could feel it. After being tainted by old demon Duan's fist intent, if they did not quickly kill the person they most wanted to kill in their hearts, they would be influenced by the intense emotions carried by the fist intent, either ending up desolate and scratching their chests to suicide or dying in despair from not being able to become heroes. To be a hero is to kill the person they hated most, to kill the person they previously did not dare to. Old demon Duan's fist technique was indeed like a plague, poisonous. Only by acting in this way could they find an antidote. Chapter 165. The value of the 12 layers of Spring Rain Demon Blade continues to rise. The eager desire of Monkey Face and Chicken to kill their own father and Gu Daoist proved one thing. Hatred and heroic spirit do not disappear, they only transfer. It all boils down to this. They have simply shifted from Duan Yun onto Monkey Face and Chicken. If Duan Yun knew about this, he would definitely think the world is quite scientific. No, he is now studying this very science. In the gloomy basement, Feng Linger's shoes had already been taken off, and until now, her delicate toes were still curled up. 2 days ago, Shening used silk to protect her, yet she was still influenced by the fist intent. The moment she came into contact with the punch's wind, Shening immediately sensed something was wrong, because that punch's wind seemed to directly penetrate her sea of consciousness, along with the fist intent and intense emotions it carried. Fortunately, her 9-death silkworm silk was pure and flawless, able to block out these bizarre changes. But later, when she thought of Feng Linger and protected her, it seemed like Feng Linger had already been purified by Duan Yun's punch's wind. These past few days, Feng Linger had been in a continuously melancholic state, sometimes even shedding despondent tears. Xining could not help but blame Duan Yun for her carelessness in punching. However, Duan Yun disagreed, stating that Xining shared half the responsibility. Because of your blockage, she only felt that despondence but didn't get the sense of my supreme heroic spirit. If the sense of despondence and the heroic spirit were felt together, she wouldn't have had a problem, and might even have become more positive and optimistic, Duan Yun explained. Xining couldn't help but retort sarcastically, "Are you sure? This time, don't block and try my full extreme hatred fist intent to see," Duan Yun confidently stated. Xining quickly said, "I'll pass on that. But with her condition, you have to take responsibility." Duan Yun replied, "Responsible, of course responsible. How could I shirk responsibility for my junior sister's affairs? You should know, I am myself a very excellent gynecologist, a very excellent doctor." Ever since unleashing that punch of extreme hatred, Duan Yun's mood had improved a lot these few days. The most direct manifestation was that he became more confident, more optimistic. In the past, he considered himself an excellent gynecologist, but now he was gradually dropping the gynecologist label. He could train in martial arts and achieve anything, so naturally, he would show the same trend in healing and saving people. With a medical practitioner's compassionate heart, his medical skills are bound to improve, which is very scientific. So, the despondent Fenglinger was once again brought into the basement by Duan Yun. This time, even her shoes were removed. These past 2 days, under his careful observation, he had found the point of Fenglinger's despair. It was the same as when he found the knot in the hearts of the goddess catcher sisters. Just need to increase the strength to break through it, and there would definitely be no problem. The next moment, Duan Yun's jade finger heaven finger strength was ruthlessly shot into the soles of Fenglinger's feet as if it cost nothing. Visibly, the originally empty gaze in Fenglinger's beautiful eyes suddenly sharpened, quickly sparkling with charming radiance, accompanied by a mix of suppressed and then released breaths. From the moment the finger's strength entered her body, her toes had been consistently curled up. When Xining, who was cooking, was alerted by Zhu and LV and rushed to the basement, Duan Yun's treatment was already finished. He straightened his clothes, walked straight out, leaving Xining bewildered, while Fenglinger still lay there, her back to Xining, leaving Xining confused. Facing this patient, Xining felt a bit nervous and asked, "Hey, did he mess around?" Fenglinger still did not move. Xining couldn't help but grow even more nervous, afraid that if this person was already despondent and was then messed with by old demon Duan, the consequences would be unimaginable. At that moment, only to hear Fenglinger with curled toes saying, "So comfortable. How can it be this comfortable?" "Ah?" Xining was bewildered. Fenglinger, facing the basement wall, suddenly said, "This person is truly a devil, able to make people die, and make them live, even so comfortably." After saying these words, she turned over. Xining discovered that her entire demeanor was restored to its former radiance. No, her gaze was even more enchanting than before. In that instant, in the dim basement, Xining fully understood her meaning. Duan Yun's punch could make her despair and not want to live, but he could also cure her in an instant, comfortably cure her, making her want to live, and even fondly remember the process of healing. How could this sound more and more like the methods of a demon controlling someone? Nevertheless, no matter what, Fenglinger had recovered. At the very least, she wouldn't remain in that despondent, pitiful state. Actually, that appearance was quite beautiful, with a kind of sorrowful beauty of a sickly person, sometimes making Duan Yun want to throw another punch, plunging her into despondence. After healing the innocent victim, Duan Yun was very satisfied with the newly learned fist technique. Just wasn't sure about the specific effects. After all, Fenglinger only endured half of the fist intent. To know the full effect of the fist intent, one would have to wait until his next demon slaying. After this strange boxing invincible, Yuzhu Villa temporarily returned to calm, just waiting for the Murong brothers to return. Fenglinger was waiting to settle accounts with him, while Duan Yun was waiting for him to bring new junior sisters back for treatment. Recently, his medical skills have been on the rise, and he was really looking forward to new patients. He liked to challenge various illnesses of his junior sisters. Of course, during this period, Duan Yun was not idle. The gate of Yuzhu Villa had been blasted away. He had to make a new one, and the yard had been dug into such a deep hole by him. Deeper than a well, it had to be filled. Now, Duan Yun, proficient in dual masters of sword and saber, in finger technique and fist technique, discovered he had also improved a level in construction work. Chapter 166. A person alone rebuilt the walls and the door frame and began to apply plaster with fist techniques. This time, the old boxer, Xiao Ying, unexpectedly did not come to help. Consequently, Duan Yun could only strip down and apply plaster and mud by himself. Thus, in the courtyard, the scene reappeared of him working unclothed, watched by 4 women and a panda. During this period, Feng Linger actually practiced her martial arts even more diligently than before. Due to experiencing profound melancholy and Duan Yun's almost godlike healing, her life was like a roller coaster ride which suddenly enlightened her and made her feel that her swordsmanship could reach a new level. And the Panda Dubai was also very diligent, not only imitating Duan Yun's boxing but even copying him in plastering. The gate had been repaired. What remained was to fill the hole. Duan Yun could only use the Biming divine skill to absorb soil, then blast it into the pit. Unfortunately, the hole was not only deep but also collapsible, so he did not finish in one day. Duan Yun became a bit tired, so he prepared to continue the work tomorrow. At night, after the 3 of them had their meal, they were about to rest. Suddenly, a series of footsteps sounded in the courtyard. Shining, the old riverside, was the first to be on alert. "Father!" finally returned. A man's voice rang out. However, the voice suddenly deepened, changing its tone. "Who dug this hole? What the hell?" By this time, Duan Yun and Shining had already come out of the room. The light from Shun Ying's lamp spilled out, illuminating the Murong brothers' face covered in dirt as they climbed out of the hole. "Brother has returned," Duan Yun said excitedly. Brothers meet, tears welling up in their eyes. The Murong brothers also happily said, "I'm back. Where's the younger sister?" Duan Yun looked outside and asked. The Murong brothers hesitated for a moment and said, "There isn't a younger sister." Duan Yun asked in surprise, "No younger sister? Then what were you doing when you went out?" Climbing out from the dirt, the Murong brothers revealed an expression of pain and confusion in their eyes, saying, "That's a long story. We can talk about it slowly later." Now that the Murong brothers had returned, it was naturally time for a good celebration at Yuzhu Villa. So, the kitchen lights were quickly lit. Even if it was just some peanuts and chicken feet as dishes, the aroma of wine wafting from the jar was intoxicating. The Murong brothers looked like they were exhausted. After taking a large gulp of wine, they began to recount their adventures. "I received news that after burying Shining, I rushed to Great Ming Lake overnight. The intelligence stated that my sister, Lu Qingqing, was there." Upon uttering the word sister, a pained expression crossed the Murong brothers' melancholic Dahua-like face. "I had not moved around the martial world for a long time and felt that the world was somewhat unfamiliar. On the way to Great Ming Lake, I encountered a group of vicious men trying to insult a lotus picker. Seeing their brutal methods, how could I, the Murong brothers, stand by and do nothing? I decided to deal with these brutes right there and then." Before becoming friends with young hero Duan Lang, the Murong brothers hated seeing others bullied, and after mixing with Duan Lang for so long, their heroic spirit surged even more. They instantly took action and, unexpectedly, another hero joined in the fight. Both were skilled at martial arts, so naturally, the thugs were no match for them. Afterward, the Murong brothers bonded with this hero known as Ning Tian, and they became good friends. Since Ning Tian was also heading to Great Ming Lake, they set off together. Unexpectedly, not only was Ning Tian skilled in martial arts, holding a folding fan with poise, but he was also highly adept at cooking and even a scholarly writer in his leisure time. An interesting person indeed. En route, the Murong brothers and he traveled through mountains and waters, eating and drinking, until they finally approached Great Ming Lake. Thinking about meeting Lu Qingqing by the shores of Great Ming Lake, the Murong brothers couldn't help but feel nervous. During this time, my relationship with Ning Tian grew even better. However, while I was anxious about Lu Qingqing, I discovered a terrifying fact. What is it? As ever the perfect listener, under the dim night, Shun Ying couldn't help but ask. The hand of the Murong brothers holding the wine cup was shaking a bit, showing a face full of panic. I accidentally saw a crescent birthmark on Ning Tian's arm. You know, after experiencing 5 stages of soul-searing romance, I've become somewhat afraid of such things. I once questioned my father about whether there were any other sisters out there, and he hesitated. Seeing my pain, he then mentioned one. He said I have a sister who was born with a crescent birthmark on her right arm. Quite unique. Hearing this, both Duan Yun and Shining gasped in astonishment. The good friend turning out to be a sister, especially combined with the Murong brothers' panic and haunted expression, gave off a sense of horror. It must be said, the significance of 12 layers of spring rain continued to increase. The Murong brothers had only gone out once and were able to encounter another half-sister. The Murong brothers couldn't help saying, "Only then did I realize why I felt a bond with Ning Tian at first sight, why I enjoyed his company so much, and even why I felt a vague desire to stay with him even though he was a man. Because he was actually a woman in disguise, my paternal half-sister. It's just that her disguise was so clever I did not recognize her. Until I saw that crescent birthmark that I fully realized the truth. At that time, all I could do was pretend to be unaware and wait for the right moment to quietly leave her. I knew I could not fall any deeper, but thinking about the times I spent with Ning Tian, I felt so agonized, so reluctant to let go. Upon saying this, the Murong brothers showed an expression that said, "Endless hatred, unbearably persistent." Chapter 167. Duan Yun and Shining showed contempt on their faces. It hasn't been long, and they already look like they're dying. Afterwards, Murong continued, "In the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up and heard some faint sounds. At that time, Ning Tian and I were staying at an inn by the river. Because the inn was full, our rooms were not next to each other. I thought about leaving, but suddenly I really wanted to see her, just one more glance." Hearing this, Duan Yun and Shining showed a contemptuous expression again. Knowing it was his sister and still peeking. Isn't that perverted? Knowing not to get too involved, yet still wanting to look. Isn't that asking for trouble? Murong no longer wanted to comment on the two, as their gazes were very similar. A perfect match like a married couple. "You'll understand my pain when you find out you are siblings. Don't look at me like that." I really couldn't help it. I went to the outside of Ning Tian's room, but found out Ning Tian hadn't slept yet. There was no lighting in the room, but it seemed like someone was there. Since Ning Tian's room was by the river, the moonscape was just right that night and suitable for a romantic setting. So in the reflection of the river, I saw him talking to someone else. The moment I saw that person, I was scared to death. Do you know who I saw? It was my sister Qingqing. Qingqing was talking to Ning Tian, and it seemed like they knew each other for a long time. Although I couldn't hear what they were talking about, I could feel they were discussing me, like they were planning against me. Their faces reflected in the river water, rippling, looked like they were staring at me, which was terrifying. Maybe, from the moment Ning Tian made his move, this was a trap set against me. Qingqing must have known I would come. Hearing this, Duan Yun and Shining were shocked again. Damn it, the sibling catching hasn't even started yet, and this already sounds like a horror movie. I initially felt I could handle Qingqing, but now 2 against 1, I lost confidence. I felt I couldn't outplay them, so I ran away in the middle of the night. Yet it seemed like they didn't let me go and chased after me. I had to take detours while fleeing. Just a few days ago, I hid in a graveyard for almost half a month before finally shaking them off, and only then did I return here. At this point, Murong seemed like he had lost half his life. I shouldn't have gone out. If I hadn't gone out, I wouldn't have met a new sister, wouldn't have hit it off right away, wouldn't have made a travel pact, and without these memories I wouldn't be in so much pain now. Speaking, Morong wore a pained mask again. And I wouldn't be so scared. Really, feeling pain and fear. At this moment, fear was evident in Morong's eyes, as if he had suddenly seen a vision of the new sister teaming up with the old sister, frightening him. So, you mean to say, during your long absence, you hit it off with your new sister and went off talking about romance? At this point, a woman's voice echoed eerily. Not exactly talking about romance, but there was an inexplicable attraction. Being together made me want to. At this moment, Morong suddenly realized that the speaker wasn't Shining. If it wasn't Shining, then who was speaking? Morong turned around, and his hair stood on end from fright. He saw Feng Linger standing there. The light of the oil lamp only lit up her lower body. Her face was completely unclear, making it especially terrifying in the dead of night. Linger, Morong said nervously. He reached for his weapon but realized he had placed his blade next to the table while drinking earlier. Why, bro, are you scared to see me? Feng Linger said softly. No, not at all. Actually, I just wanted to teach you a lesson, as you're as unreliable and cowardly as now. Our grievances should have been settled. I wouldn't go too far, after all, we're siblings. But why did you have him shoot my behind and make him tremble me dozens of times? At this, Feng Linger looked resentfully at Duan Yun standing behind Morong. Trembling? Dozens of times. Morong's face turned green as he looked back at Duan Yun. Duan Yun, looking innocent, said, Brother, it was all a misunderstanding. With a clang, at this moment, Feng Linger's red face sword was unsheathed.
Morong, prepare tudi.
Morong, without any hesitation, quickly shielded himself with Duan Yun and pleaded, Help me, please! Duan Yun calmly said, I already agreed with her that I wouldn't interfere with your sibling issues this time. Still hiding. With a swish, the sword chi of the red face sword shot out. Morong jumped through the window, and Feng Linger chased after him with her sword. The night at Yuzhu Villa became lively once again, occasionally filled with Morong's screams. Shining couldn't help but say, Are you really not going to help? She felt like Morong was going to be chopped to death. Duan Yun said seriously, He should be fine. He noticed while causing Feng Linger to tremble. She really only intended to give Morong a beating, not to kill him. With a bang, Morong pushed the door open and walked in. His appearance startled both Duan Yun and Shining. He had branches with bright flowers stuck in his head, looking like a sunflower. Morong, from now on our grievances are settled. Outside, Feng Linger's cold voice could be heard. Duan Yun, looking at Morong's pitiful state, said, Brother, how are you? Not painful. After saying these two words, Morong suddenly fainted. Chapter 168. As Duan Yun expected, Morong brothers did not die. Feng Linger's flower arrangement skills were excellent. Every flower branch made Morong bleed and left scars on his head, but none were fatal. However, it looked truly terrifying. Morong lay there for a day before waking up, and upon waking, he started crying. Duan Yun couldn't help saying, Didn't you say it wasn't painful? Morong sobbed, It hurts my heart. It's not like she stabbed your heart. Shining remarked. Morong suddenly said distractedly, The funeral with plum blossom on top, burying my memories, woo woo woo. From the moment Feng Linger made her move, he knew everything Feng Linger said was true. She had forgotten the emotions she once had with him, or rather, when she found out he was her half-brother. When he fled, when she saw him clearly, she only wanted to teach him a lesson alone. What remained in Feng Linger was just irritation and anger at his cowardice, without a trace of fondness. He cried because of his dead emotions. Meanwhile, when Duan Yun misdiagnosed, he found nothing wrong with Feng Linger. He even felt she was more normal than shadowing, which was relatively correct. Then, Morong with tears in his eyes said, Where is Linger? She must have left heartbroken, right? Duan Yun shook his head. No. She said she felt she might get sick and wanted me to examine her a few more times. Morong suddenly remembered something and grabbed Duan Yun's hand tightly, nervously saying, I won't allow you to make her shiver coldly again. At that moment, Feng Linger's voice came from outside, saying, I like him making me shiver. What? Morong's face turned purple. That was the manifestation of the anthocyanin from yesterday's flower branches entering his skin. Feng Linger leaned against the door frame, said nonchalantly, Even old man Morong doesn't dare to control me. What right do you have? I just like him making me shiver. Morong suddenly gripped Duan Yun's hand even tighter, almost to the point of causing bruising. Old demon Duan, have you cast a devil seed in my sister's Dao heart? Morong questioned. Duan Yun, with a disgusted expression, said, Devil seed in Dao heart? Why are you also accusing this young hero now? Seems like your trip outside has made you quite ill. Let this doctor treat you properly. What are you doing? Morong asked in panic. At that moment, he was already being lifted by Duan Yun. Of course, it's off to the cellar for treatment, Duan Yun stated seriously. Cellar? Damn, old demon Duan, you spare no one, Morong yelled. The worst thing in treating illnesses is hiding the disease and fearing the doctor, and seeing your behavior, we need to increase the strength. Duan Yun then quickened his pace. Old demon Duan is going mad. Save me, Morong yelled towards Shining. Shining ignored him and instead spoke to Feng Linger. You like him making you shiver. It must be a joke to tease your brother, right? Feng Linger revealed a sweet and cute smile, saying, Sister Ing, of course, who likes a pervert to make them shiver. Did you really believe it?
Suddenly, Feng Linger questioned.
Shining denied. Who believes that? By the way, when are you leaving? I'll see you off. Feng Linger showed a puzzled expression, saying, Who said I was leaving? Shining looked confused. Didn't you say you came to settle scores with Morong brothers? Yeah. After settling scores, I suddenly found this place interesting and decided to stay a while longer. Then Feng Linger left looking utterly innocent. You! Shining watched Feng Linger's departing figure, glanced at her own right hand. Her expression became slightly grave. Meanwhile, from the cellar came the struggling voice of Morong. I'm not sick. I really am not sick. Old demon Duan, you can't make me shiver. Help! Somebody save me. Oh! He screamed intensely, but unfortunately, no one cared. Or rather, in that dark cellar, only Dr. Duan cared about him, concerned about his condition. Almost at the same time, in a dilapidated temple in Yun State, a man and a woman were betting on crickets, surrounded by spectators. The woman's clothes were casually undone, revealing her skin, which she seemed unconcerned about. Her attention was all on the crickets, having sold almost everything at home, even herself, all because of this bet. Then, a middle-aged man suddenly rushed in, exclaiming, I want to be a hero. The woman turned her head, surprised. Li Kuan, what are you doing here? The man in front of her was her husband, whom she never took seriously. The surrounding people also knew about the couple's relationship and could not help showing contemptuous smiles. I said, I want to be a hero. Bet your egg. Is it your fault that my mom is like this? It is you. Saying this, the middle-aged man threw a punch, and the woman's head burst open, blood splattering directly onto the faces of the surrounding gamblers. Murder! There's been a murder! The gamblers in the temple, seeing the woman's body fall to the ground, turned pale. Some still had that contemptuous smile, just stiff and frozen. The crickets in the cages got blood on them and fought even more fiercely. This was a horrifying and absurd scene. No one knew why this timid man suddenly had the courage to attack his wife. And that punch was so fierce. The middle-aged man looked at his bloody fist and continued to yell, I want to be a hero. I've killed this wench. I am the hero now. Amidst this, his inner true chi circulated, swiftly becoming thicker and more robust. Chapter 169. Old Demon Duan brings calamity to the martial world, never stopping for a moment. Yusher Town, Green Jade Tea House. Yusher Town originally did not have a tea house, but ever since Old Demon Duan's bloody battle against numerous heroes at the graveyard, the influx of people increased, prompting the recent establishment of this tea house. The popularity of this tea house also proved the foresight of the tea house owner. Or rather, it could only be said that Old Demon Duan has really shown his mettle. Old Demon Duan slaughtered all the heroes at the graveyard, not even the peacock demon escaping his deadly grip. His demonic reputation was now thunderous throughout Yun State, with heroes coming to the graveyard to observe incessantly. However, according to normal circumstances, though this battle was fierce, the excitement was temporary. The place was shabby and old, filled with graves. The visiting heroes wouldn't be endless, and after a wave of craze, the popularity should have rapidly decreased. After all, major events transpire every day in the martial world. Today, Old Demon Duan's graveyard battle is trendy. Who knows, maybe tomorrow some other person or event would be all the rage. But what's abnormal about Old Demon Duan is that he seems to be causing trouble anytime and anywhere, and always big trouble. Not long after the graveyard battle, he created a story about the Jade Sword sect acting for heaven, which caused a disaster in the martial world, and soon after, he went directly to Yu State, causing several major incidents. The episode of the Huangshan heroine drenching the golden sword in urine, the bitterness between the demon and the White Sox sect born from love turning into hatred, all became classics. Yes, even the popularity of a grand event like a duel with the demon Juxiang had to admit defeat. Thus, after reaching the peak of his infamy, Old Demon Duan's name never dwindled. It even surged more ferociously. Saying he was the hottest figure in both Yun and Yu State over these years might be an understatement. Those who decided to invest heavily in Yusher Town at the beginning all earned a fortune, and the Green Jade Tea House was just one of them. This tea house originally only had 2 floors, but later on, 2 more floors were hastily added, not caring whether the foundation dug previously could bear the weight. Couldn't be helped, the business was too good. Who would miss out on the opportunity to make money? In Wangchun City, where money is at the core, to a certain degree, money is power. Now, Old Demon Duan, Shining, Fenglinger, and the Murong brothers all sat on the 3rd floor of the tea house sipping tea and listening to a storyteller. Ever since the first time she heard the legend of Old Demon Duan from the storyteller, Fenglinger has become a regular here. It could be said that after Shining, she was yet another fangirl of Old Demon Duan's stories. The little Yuzhu villa actually had 2 fangirls of Old Demon Duan. Today's tea drinking and storytelling were hosted by this newly joined fangirl. Since there was nothing to do in the villa, all 4 of them came, leaving only Panda Dubai and Little Gray at home. As for Monkey, who once again took Duan Yun to find a divine skill, he had disappeared. Yuzhu Villa's rare occasion of 4 people coming out to listen to a story indeed attracted quite a bit of attention. No other reason, but at least 3 of the 4 were outstandingly attractive. Actually, the one with the most ordinary appearance was also pretty decent today. After careful grooming and dressing up, he somewhat resembled the former elegance of Dehua. And the storyteller Old Gua was also quite enthusiastic, bringing a new story today. A few days ago, a terrifying strange incident occurred in Qingsong Town in the northern part of Yun State. There is a coward named Li Kuan in Qingsong Town who worked as a coachman. With great difficulty, he married a wife, whom he naturally cherished like a fairy. However, the wife was addicted to gambling, which quickly led her to squander Li Kuan's savings. She was even flirting around to make money for gambling. Furthermore, rumors had it that Li Kuan's mother was harmed by this gambling-addicted wife. But as the most quintessential coward, Li Kuan naturally forgave her and continued to toil hard to provide for his wife. At this point, Duan Yun, Shining, and Fenglinger all showed expressions of disdain, feeling that this coward was too spineless. Only the Murong brothers spoke with deep affection. If it weren't for love, why would he bear all of this? Yet, just a few days ago, Li Kuan suddenly went berserk, according to neighbors, suddenly boxing at thin air, and it was quite impressive. After that, even more shocking news emerged. Li Kuan's wife only took out his savings and casually pawned the family treasure jade, left by Li Kuan's deceased mother for gambling. And as a result, she was punched to death by Li Kuan. You hear this? Isn't it bizarre? A good-for-nothing coward who dared to kill his wife, whom he worshipped like a fairy. Is this even human? At this moment, Old Gua's expression suddenly became even more excited, exclaiming, And what's more horrifying, after killing his wife, this coward cried out, "I want to be a hero." Are these words a sane person would say? Was this Li Kuan provoked by something? Someone questioned. It's more than just being provoked. He's completely lost his mind. Afterwards, it was said that this coward Li Kuan's fist technique became extraordinarily fierce, and he beat 2 cowards from the neighboring town to death alive, vowing that as long as he lived, he would be a hero, set on killing all the cowards in the world. And that's just the first one. Afterwards, a humiliated coachman suddenly learned a good fist technique and beat the young master who made him eat manure to death, all the while shouting, "I want to be a hero," vowing to kill all the masters who bully their servants recklessly. At this point, storyteller Oldgua slammed down the block of wood used to gain attention and said, "Have you all figured it out? Clearly, someone's playing dirty tricks behind the scenes. Who could be behind those tricks? What do you think? It couldn't possibly be old Demon Duan again." Oldgua suddenly said excitedly, "Exactly right. Who else but old Demon Duan? Think about it. That maniacal act of shouting, 'I want to be a hero.' Who else but old Demon Duan, who enjoys playing the hero, could pull off such a stunt?" Exactly. Exactly. It must be old Demon Duan. Since the time before when Duan Yun had acted as the hero executing vigilante justice, and after the Jade Sword sect revered the heroic venerate and wreaked havoc in the martial world, the word hero had completely changed its meaning. At least in Yun State and Yu State, as soon as the word hero is mentioned, people think of old Demon Duan and his Jade Sword sect, not the real heroes. And Yun State and Yu State, which had already been in decline for many years, had so few remaining heroes that they dared not call themselves by that title anymore, fearing that clashing with the name of the old demon might displease him, bringing trouble upon themselves. At this moment, storyteller Old Gua was brimming with righteous indignation as he spoke loudly. "Look at this old demon Duan, never resting for a moment from troubling the martial world. An ordinary coward, at worst, would have been bled dry by a gambling-addicted wife, but he had to turn him into a fist-fighting husband who killed his wife, burdened with endless curses, and still wanting to be a hero, bent on killing all cowards in the world. Folks, what wrong did the cowards do to deserve such a disaster?" At this time, some listeners below the stage became anxious and asked, "Isn't there anyone to stop him?" Of course, there is. It is said that with every coward he kills, his fist technique improves even further. In the martial world, many cowards, endowed with their own unique skills, have gone to defeat him. Old Gu spoke with ease. Hearing this, several people below the stage breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, a richly dressed young man anxiously said, "And what about the coachman who dared to kill the young master? No matter how wrong the young master was, he can't rise above his station and kill him. The coachman has disappeared, but there are even more people out to kill him," said Old Gua. At this time, someone asked, "The group that old Demon Duan created before was called the Jade Sword sect. So what's the name of this new one?" Old Gua said earnestly, "This time, there is no name. No name. Some in the martial world suspect that old Demon Duan is trying to create an evil secret organization. The members of this organization murder under the pretext of acting as heroes, killing all kinds of people. For instance, the coward specifically targets cowards, coachmen specifically target young masters, and others focus on their own targets. Think about it, how many types of people are there in the martial world? When being a coward and those young masters who make their subordinates eat feces are considered sins, does the martial world have any more rules or laws? I think this martial world is doomed to never have peace due to old Demon Duan." As he said this, Old Gua had an expression of heartfelt grief, teary-eyed. Down below, whether it was the guilty-looking men or the young misses, or the listeners who were filled with righteous indignation, all began to throw their gratuity onto the stage. Feng Linger and Shining enjoyed listening and initially wanted to throw money too, but seeing Duan Yun with a gloomy face, they held back. Feng Linger couldn't help but say affectionately, "I didn't quite believe them when they said you were blamed for so many things, but now I do." These past days, she had been staying with Duan Yun, and aside from coming out to listen to stories this time, He hadn't left the mountain villa. How could he possibly stir up so much trouble? For a moment, she found Duan Yun rather pitiable and couldn't help wanting to comfort him. At that moment, Duan Yun said, "Today, no matter what, his legs will have to be broken again." Fenglinger and Shining were suddenly on high alert, and Fenglinger dissuaded him. "Don't. I still want to listen for a few more days." Shining chimed in, "3 days." Fenglinger nodded. "Just 3 days, and we'll break his legs for you." Seeing Duan Yun still hesitant, Shining quickly added, "I'll definitely hit him hard. You trust my fists." It was not until then that Duan Yun nodded and said, 3 days. Not a day longer or I'll drag you both to the cellar." Upon hearing this, Shining and Fenglinger's hairs stood on end. Anxiously, they nodded, their expressions serious, signaling they would definitely accomplish the task. They had to succeed. Old Demon Duan's anger could have dire consequences, and once in the cellar, they'd have no say in their fate. Chapter 170. Fairy Ziyu exposed. I, young hero, will surely treat her with effort. After listening to Old Gua, who was about to break his legs telling stories, Duan Yun and 2 others started strolling in Yushur town. Why 3 people, not 4, because the Murong brothers were too lazy to stroll. Knowing that his own sister and Old Demon Duan also had some unclear ties, he felt tired. Just let it be. Even if the whole world was destroyed, it actually doesn't matter anymore. What he liked most now was looking up at the starry sky. Only when looking up at the stars could he realize the wonders of the world and his own insignificance, and only then could he temporarily forget the pain that love brought him. Thus, Duan Yun, Shining, and Fenglinger were walking on the road, looking like a man with his beautiful wives, envied by many passers-by. Duan Yun found that the town had really become much livelier. There were many more stalls and shops than before. Previously, he had to go to small spring town to buy things. But now there was no need. Duan Yun couldn't help but sigh. Does this count as boosting the local economy? All because of that battle at the graveyard. The originally deathly Yushur town had become so lively. Along the way, the 3 of them also discovered 2 bookstalls selling leisure books. Duan Yun squatted down to take a look, picked up a copy of Old Witch Heroine Tears, and said, "The main character in this isn't that person, is it?" That's needless to say. Being in Yushur town, if not leisure books based on Old Demon Duan, then whose? "I'll take this one." Duan Yun directly bought the book. Shining and Fenglinger couldn't help but look at him with weird eyes. Shining mockingly said, "It seems you still can't forget about that female hero." "Not at all. I just want to understand the thoughts of the people of Martial World and find some relatability. Reading leisure books based on oneself, where else to find such relatability?" At this point, the stall owner brought out another stack of books, saying, "There are some more here." He then displayed Female Fall Sadomasochism, Fairy Feeding Demon Records, Old Demon and Goddess Catcher's Secret Cellar, and other leisure books. Duan Yun originally wanted to buy a few more, but thinking this might delay his chivalrous deeds, he only bought another one related to Goddess Catcher. "Ah!" Shining snorted coldly. Duan Yun and the twin Goddess Catchers had some connections that she had seen with her own eyes. From his choice of books, one could see his preferences for female heroes and Goddess Catcher. Shining felt discriminated against as a female boxer and wanted to punch those who wrote the books. But then, Fenglinger had already stood up tall and gently said, "Lately, I really feel like being a female hero. Duan Yun, do you think I have the spirit of a female hero?" "Definitely," Duan Yun replied earnestly. Hearing this, Fenglinger couldn't help but feel happy. Shining was shocked. "So shameless. You, a flower fanatic which still dream of being a female hero? Based on what? Based on your fair skin?" Duan Yun and the others then bought some roast and vegetables for dinner before starting to head back. Duan Yun had not strolled through this town in a long time and found it was indeed much more prosperous. And likewise, the prices had gone up quite a bit. But with the rent given by the Dragon King's wife, he didn't care too much about it. What's more outrageous was that there were not only various leisure books based on him, Masks of Martial World based on his appearance, children inappropriate shadow plays based on him, but even fake secret books named after him being sold. This was almost an entire industry chain. Duan Yun and the others found the Morong brothers and folded back together. On the way, thinking about the new leisure books he purchased, Duan Yun couldn't help but ask about the new sister, saying, "Brother, you said that Ning Tian's sister also writes books? Does she have a pen name?" Speaking of the new sister, the Morong brother suddenly got excited, saying, "Yes, I remember everything about her. She's called Fairy Ziyu." "What fairy?" Duan Yun suddenly raised his tone, asking. "Fairy Ziyu," Morong replied. At this time, he noticed that Duan Yun's fists were clenched, and hurriedly asked, "What's the matter?" Duan Yun chuckled. "Nothing much. I just know that this new junior sister's condition must be the most serious." Morong, agitated, said, "On what basis do you say that about her?" But seeing Feng linger right behind, his tone softened immediately. Duan Yun was unbothered and said, Fairy Ziyu, so you are Fairy Ziyu. This young hero has been missing you terribly." Morong thought of what Feng Linger had said, and seeing Duan Yun say such things to his new sister, he anxiously exclaimed, "What filthy thoughts do you have now?" Duan Yun retorted, "What filthy thoughts? She fed me half a book of shit. How could I not treat her properly? Where is she now?" Morong felt a chill and answered, "I don't know." Seeing Duan Yun still looking at him, he quickly continued, "I really don't know. I was avoiding them, how could I possibly know?" He knew old Demon Duan was a man of action, who would act without catching a breath. If he knew where Ning Tian was, he might deal with this new favorite sister of his overnight. He figured it out, guessing Duan Yun had just read a book written by the sister. Morong couldn't help but say, "Writing books? Isn't that just making stuff up? You as a young hero should be more magnanimous." Duan Yun glanced at him and said, "Personal grievances you mind less. Besides, if she could write such a book, she must be seriously ill. Me, as a doctor, curing her first would be helping you." Seeing Duan Yun's serious expression, Morong broke into a cold sweat. He had taken such a roundabout way, hiding in the graveyard, all to avoid Ning Tian and Qingqing. He was unsure of dealing with the two of them, and the thought of them made his heart ache. These days, he neither wanted them to find him, yet he missed them in his heart. But at this moment, he only hoped they would not find him, because old Demon was right by his side. After old Demon Duan treated Linger, she had somewhat changed. Seeing old Demon Duan's demeanor, if he met Ning Tian's sister, it would be ruthless, and who knew what she would be treated into. Of all these sisters, now only Wan Jun, after being treated by Duan Yun, still maintained her righteousness, not uttering words like she shivered with fear from Duan Yun's coldness, which pained him. Having passed that lake, walking further up the mountain, Yuzhu Villa wasn't far away. At this time, it was early winter. The grass on the ground had long turned yellow, but if you have eyes that perceive beauty, what you see won't be withering and desolation. And since throwing that punch, Duan Yun had become an extremely optimistic person, adept at finding beauty. Today was somewhat sunny, golden sunlight sprinkled on the wild grass, making it look like gold, and the worn stone stairs among the wild grass seemed at a glance like white jade hidden amidst gold. At this moment, Morong suddenly said, "How come there are people living there now?" Duan Yun followed his gaze, also surprised. "Really is." Around the graveyard, not only Yuzhu Villa had estates. When Duan Yun first came here to find a residence, there were some abandoned houses halfway up the mountain. These abandoned houses looked even more dilapidated and eerie, which was why Duan Yun, by mistake, ended up at Yuzhu Villa. Indeed, old Duan Yun wouldn't bother with those houses, even beggars on the roadside would avoid them, because some houses were too dilapidated and eerie, worse than sleeping in the wilderness for reducing one's lifespan. Only freaks like them would live in a place like Yuzhu Villa. But now, around the deserted houses near Yuzhu Villa, there were people moving about. Judging by their attire, they didn't look like beggars or refugees. Rather, they seemed like people from the martial world. Morong couldn't help but say, "I already felt it was strange when I was in the town, There are more people from the martial world than I imagined. Shining, puzzled, said, most who come to see the traces of old Demon Duan are people from the martial world. Isn't it normal for there to be more of them in the town? Morong shook his head. I think it's a bit too much. Just in that tea house, nearly half of the people are trained. Some are even masters. Even the demon-slaying conference wasn't this crowded. Hearing this, Shunning fell into thought, saying, now that you mention it, it really is strange. Especially seeing those eerie, deserted houses now being frequented by people from the martial world. Everyone felt a peculiar sensation. Duan Yun couldn't help but say, is something about to happen? Shining nodded. Maybe something big. Gosh. Doesn't that mean I have a chance to practice chivalry and the medical practitioner's compassionate heart? Duan Yun suddenly exclaimed excitedly. Filling the cellar with patients was something Dr. Duan had longed for but hadn't achieved recently. If something big really happened here, it might indeed become possible to fill the cellar. After all, Dr. Duan, medical practitioner's compassionate heart, wouldn't easily refuse any heartbroken injured female hero. Even if there aren't female heroes, he could use his boundless heroic spirit to treat them into female heroes. Watching his excited face, Shin Ying and the others felt a headache. They always felt something strange was going to happen. Chapter 171. Wine in the Sky. Night fishing for the Azure Dragon. Nighttime. Duan Yun lay in bed unable to sleep. This was absolutely not because he had watched Old Witch Harrow in Tears and Old Demon and Goddess Catcher's Secret Cellar. Rather, it was his new expectations for the future that kept him awake. He had actually found a clue about Fairy Ziyu. Though Duan Yun was not a man to hold grudges, unfortunately, Fairy Ziyu had caused him considerable mental harm. One might even call it a psychological shadow, and coincidentally, she had become his comrade's new sister. Isn't that ironic? He could not only help his comrades fiercely treat their sister but also fiercely eliminate his own mental shadows, killing two birds with one stone. If it wasn't for young hero Duan being thrifty, and guessing that Morong would sooner or later be found by this new sister, he would have loved to spend money to find this clue about Fairy Ziyu and then quickly capture her and send her straight to a freshly dug cellar for treatment. Besides, according to Morong and Shining, something big might happen in Yusher Town. This event might not be smaller than the bloody battle he had at the graveyard against a horde of demons. Thus, his ambition began to rise once more. How could a hero and a doctor not work hard on their careers? The world is crazy, but he is sane. Keeping sane while working on his career in this crazy world is not easy, and it requires a balance of work and leisure. And Yuju Villa was his haven, his resting place. He had been back for a while now, and had rested enough. So, he thought about continuing his career. The trip to Yu State, he recalled it fully. Whether it was fighting evil demon Juxiang and Lady Juxiang, breaking the river dam for flood discharge, or later confronting White Sox cult, all these events had his adrenaline surging massively. Whether it was saving lives, slashing, or thrilling, it felt so exhilarating. An exhilaration that made him insatiable. In his past life lasting decades, he had pitifully few memories that made him feel proud and worth reminiscing. But this life was different. Thinking about how he cleaned up the harmful demons in martial world time after time, thinking about the child he helped Lady Zhao give birth to, thinking about saving people after breaking the river dam, and the sense of achievement he felt in his heart, thinking about still being able to adventure in such an absurd and bizarre martial world. Duan Yun couldn't help but feel excited and comforted. He, Duan Yun, might one day grow old, unable to walk, only able to sit in a wheelchair or lie in bed waiting for death. But he knew that as long as he had these memories, his heart would not be desolate. He only hoped that when looking back at his life, whether as a hero or as a doctor, his life would not have been in vain. Yes, no matter how many people slander him, twist his chivalrous acts and compassionate heart, he still remains true to the light. No, he is the light himself. I am the sun, destined to illuminate this filthy dark world. Thinking these thoughts, Duan Yun could hardly contain his excitement. Right, and also there's more. Last time not being able to retain the beautiful ghost was also a regret. He really wanted to know what was under the skirt of that beautiful ghost, whether it was really a deep abyss. He was a person who liked to research. Maybe after being a hero and a doctor, he could become a biologist. A biologist starting with studying the secrets under the skirt of a beautiful ghost. After all, he is a genius like no other. There's nothing he cannot do. The next evening, the horizon was decorated with a fiery red cloud. Quite a sight. Although Yuju Villa was old and run down, and the graveyard behind it was gloomy and eerie, neither could prevent the scenery in front of their eyes from being beautiful. And under this beautiful fiery sky, the 4 persons and 1 bear of Yuju Villa also ushered in a joyful time. Today they were going to have a feast. Stone-grilled meat. The thin black stone board was already cleaned and oiled. As the fire beneath it increased, the entire stone board looked temptingly like a large crispy cracker. With a sizzle, Feng Linger skillfully flipped the first big slice of fatty pork onto it. Duan Yun, Xining, and Murong's eyes all lit up. Soon, the stone board was filled with slices of meat. Each slice of meat was as big as half of Murong's face, emanating a tantalizing aroma. The meat wasn't done yet, but everyone's cups were already filled with wine. It had to be admitted, eating is always the most cost-effective pleasure, much more so than indulging in pleasures of the flesh or gambling. "Okay, let's eat now," said Feng Linger. As soon as her words ended, 4 pairs of chopsticks flew towards the meat slices. Then came a series of long sighs of contentment. The meat was sizzling hot, but they couldn't resist eating despite the heat. The stone board was not small, but neither were the slices of meat. Thus, by the second round, there were only 3 slices left, inevitably leading to competition. Among them, 1 studied the sword, 2 studied both swords, and 1 studied fists, all striking with lightning speed. 3 slices of meat, 4 pairs of chopsticks. Their actions were as fierce as real sword lights and sword shadows. Eventually, Xining suddenly cheating by pulling away the hot stone board and grabbing 2 slices, ended with Duan Yun seizing the last piece. It had to be admitted, Xining really excelled in these kinds of actions. Previously, she was snatching human heads. Now, she was snatching meat. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The meat continued to sizzle on the stone board. The meat grilled by Feng Linger was indeed delicious, perfectly cooked, fatty but not greasy, and crucially, the slices were big enough to be satisfying. After several rounds of eating meat and drinking some wine, everyone was a bit full. This time was the most comfortable, no need to scramble to fill their bellies anymore. If the meat was ready, they'd eat slowly. If not, they'd drink wine. "Hey, this place isn't bad. There's even a barbecue." Suddenly, a voice rang out from beyond the courtyard wall. Before the voice fell, 4 people were already standing on the courtyard wall. Chapter 172. Suddenly, they scaled the wall, their movement technique undeniably rapid. The 4 individuals were dressed in vivid red garments, with sabers wrapped in red cloth hanging at their waists. The sabers' handles styled like ghost heads, looking somewhat spine-chilling. These 4, 2 men and 2 women at this moment, a middle-aged woman in the center spoke. "I see there are many empty rooms here. May we borrow one to stay overnight?" As the owners of the mountain villa, Murong brothers spoke. "4 of you, only asking for 1 room?" Another woman said, "Of course, we always sleep in the same room." Xining couldn't help but say, "Isn't it too cramped for so many of you in 1 room?" The woman replied with a smile, "We always like to squeeze together." At this moment, she couldn't help but look towards Duan Yun and said, "If you want to squeeze in as well, we don't mind. Which room are we going to stay in after all? All these rooms look so old." As she spoke, the 4 of them had instinctively jumped down from the wall, landing without a sound, being choosy. Duan Yun, Xining, and Murong brothers were still eating meat, while Feng Linger showed a disgusted expression, complaining gloomily, "Are you just going to let them be?" Xining replied, "Here at Yuju Villa, we have a rule. In such situations, usually the weakest among us makes the first move." Feng Linger's eyes widened as she asked, "Do you think I'm the weakest?" Murong brothers and Duan Yun simultaneously looked away, pretending not to hear. But Shun Ying seriously said, "You have yet to prove yourself." Feng Linger nodded. "You're right. I should at least prove myself." Saying so, she stood up and said to them, "You four, come here." Hearing this, the four people with ghost head sabers responded. The middle-aged woman who spoke first asked, "What? Do you have a good room to offer us?" Honestly, the moment she saw the two women in the courtyard, she felt an urge to chop off the young woman's head. Her ghost head saber was indeed prettier than she was, but far less pretty than these young women, especially annoying since they were accompanied by such a handsome man. Seeing this flamboyantly dressed woman daring to talk to her loudly, she, one of the May Mountain Four Ghost Heads, was visibly annoyed. But just as her hand touched the handle of her ghost head saber, suddenly, with a swishing sound, a gorgeous flower bloomed before her eyes. That flower, originally 2 yards away, in another swish was now above her head, piercing from the forehead to the tip of her head. Only by then, this beautiful ghost from May Mountain Four Ghost Heads noticed with a dazed expression. It was a sword like the flower branch sword. Her throat moved as she started to scream, but just as the flower branch sword retracted, her entire head exploded into a mist of blood, her eyes wide open in anger as she fell down. From beginning to end, she hadn't even drawn her ghost head saber an inch. At that moment, the remaining 3 ghosts noticed the anomaly. When the 2 male ghost heads charged over, they suddenly discovered that the beautiful ghost head was already dead. Her eyes wide open in death. Everything happened too quickly, too unexpectedly. One of the male ghost heads, upon seeing the flower branch sword, realizing, exclaimed, You are the flower." His voice cut off abruptly as a flower bloomed at his throat. A vivid flower of blood. His companion bloomed simultaneously. The last woman, terrified and panicky, attempted to flee. Shun Ying barely muttered, "Wait," when the woman staggered and fell. Her throat was pierced through by a sword chi shaped like a flower branch, the blood blossoming like a flower. Feng Linger sheathed her sword and walked back, stating indifferently, "Next time you want to keep someone alive, please tell me before I strike." By this time, not only Shin Ying and Murong brothers, but even Duan Yun, revered as the dual masters of sword and saber, looked at her differently. The sister has suddenly become much stronger. Murong brothers gasped, feeling grateful that the day's troubles were alleviated by the sister showing mercy. Grateful. Sister, the unparalleled under heaven. Indeed, Feng Linger also had a stroke of luck. Initially devastated by Duan Yun's fist intent, she was later healed by Duan Yun. Reaching a peak of comfort, it was like experiencing a drastic roller coaster of life, and thus she entered a mystifying realm. This emotional roller coaster brought about sudden and swift changes, like jumping off a cliff. Unconsciously, she infused these unforgettable ups and downs into her swordsmanship. Thus her swordsmanship also underwent similar changes. It was quick and abrupt, like leaping off a cliff, both sudden and eerily fast. Previously, her swordsmanship relied on utilizing the entire arm for power, but amid these emotional highs and lows, Feng Linger unknowingly grasped a knack. The more she used wrist power, the faster and fiercer the sword. The May Mountain Four Ghost Heads came quickly, and died even quicker, so Yuju Villa once again returned to tranquility. The dead were already killed. Burying them was next. Feng Linger outright refused. "I've killed. I won't handle the burial." Shen Ying, having feasted, said, "You two big men. Is it decent to let a delicate woman like me handle the corpses?" Saying so, she walked away with a dainty gait. Now only Murong brothers and Duan Yun were left. Suddenly, Murong placed a hand to his forehead and said, "This wine is too strong. I'm so sleepy." With a thud, he collapsed and fell asleep. Duan Yun kicked him twice, and he didn't wake up. Even if his legs were kicked off, it's still better than working right after a feast. Thus, honest Duan Yun, speechless, had to use the Biming divine skill to suck all 4 ghosts onto his back. Chapter 173. At a glance, he looked somewhat like the corpse carrier from Huang City who was as famous as the corpse chasers of Yuanling. Yuju Villa was backed by the graveyard, so burying bodies was actually very convenient. Duan Yun had earlier cleared a space on the graveyard, punched a hole in the ground, and threw the 4 bodies he had searched into it, then covered it with soil. On his way back, it had gotten dark. Duan Yun walked through the graveyard and could see scattered lights in the derelict houses halfway up the mountain. There used to be no lights there. It was unexpected that the graveyard could now have this much human activity. He couldn't help but further believe the Murong brothers' words. Something was probably going to happen here. You see, after the graveyard battle, even at his most popular times, there were quite a few people who would go to the graveyard during the day, but absolutely nobody would stay overnight in those deserted houses. What exactly did all these people come here for? These 4 impolite fellows who liked living in a single house and messing around were probably among them. Unfortunately, Feng Linger acted too quickly and left no survivors. If there had been a survivor, with his boundless heroic spirit, this rude person would certainly have a change of heart and not only tell them their purpose for coming here but may even repent and become a hero. What a pity! At this moment, an idea suddenly emerged in Duan Yun's mind. Could this be another demon-slaying conference targeting him? However, compared to the last time, which was more populated by people just watching the show, the people this time were obviously more low-key and mysterious. Without the Murong brothers saying so, he, a greenhorn of the martial world, wouldn't have known there were so many high-level martial artists in the tea house that day. This group's ability to endure was clear. With bigger plots and deeper conspiracies, wouldn't that mean an even greater threat to him? Damn, blissfully unaware until one starts thinking and gets a fright. Should he take the initiative to strike first and kill off this group of evil demons who are out to get him? But then, upon further thought, Duan Yun felt that something was off. If these people were all here for him, they wouldn't have stayed near Yuju Villa, and those 4 wouldn't have scared the snake by acting so rashly today. With that in mind, he headed towards the houses on the hillside that had lanterns lit. Those Jianghu people staying overnight in these derelict houses must be no good. I'm gonna find out what's going on right now. Just then, from his vantage point above, he noticed new arrivals outside Yuju Villa. Damn, it's like a busy marketplace now. Duan Yun snuck back silently and found that Shining, who had just wiggled her butt into the house, had come out again. Feng Linger, who was somewhat tired from killing, seemed to be coming back, and even the Murong brothers, who clearly couldn't be kicked awake just now, were awake. They had apparently noticed the newcomers outside. Not many people came to this place in half a year, but too many have come just this night. At that moment, there was a loud bang, and half a wall suddenly collapsed. After the wall fell down, 3 men walked in. The 3 men wore silk robes in red and green, all of them lame, hobbling as they walked. They seemed to completely ignore Duan Yun and the others, and were instead pointing and discussing the house in front of them. Big brother, this house really lacks aesthetic. I say, it would look better if it was all painted red or green, the lame man on the left said with a thick accent. Second brother's right, anything looks good with red and green, said the lame man on the right. Heh, there's even a panda here, they're black and white and ugly. I say, it would look better if it were painted red and green. As he spoke, the lame man began to approach Big White, who was taking a stroll in the yard. The Murong brothers swam over in their sleep and asked, "What are you doing? Who kicked that wall?" As the manor master, it was his duty to look after his walls. At this point, the Murong brothers could see the men's legs. The 3 lame men weren't actually lame. Their limp was completely due to their legs being too thick and strong. From his lying angle, he saw that their lame legs had veins bulging like pythons, leg hair like steel needles, clearly indicating extraordinary leg technique. Could this be from the heavenly ruin sect? The lame man on the right said, "I kicked the wall. First things first, this place now belongs to us, and in a moment we'll mark you and your panda, then you and your panda will belong to us too. Yo, there are also 2 girls over there." At this point, the Murong brothers spoke up. "You practice leg techniques? Why is your brain not working?" Duan Yun and the others thought the same. Those 3 seemed to lack a screw. "Big brother," he said, "our brains don't work. What should we do?" "Kill him." Upon hearing the eldest brother's command, the lame man began to move towards the Morong brothers. He had always behaved in a straightforward way, like an idiot, but this time, the moment he took his steps, his whole demeanor changed. His leg hair acted as needles as he flexed his muscles. The Morong brothers were about to draw their swords when, at that moment, Panda Dabai stepped in front of him, shielding him with his body. The Morong brothers stood up, asking, "Brother Big White, what's going on?" Then they saw Big White stood up, pointed at the lame man, patted his own chest, and barked out a woof. The Morong brothers turned their heads to look at Duan Yun and asked, "What does it mean?" Duan Yun replied, somewhat surprised as well. "Big White says he wants to challenge him to a duel." "Ah?" Shining spoke earnestly. "Big White, this guy is no ordinary person. I should be the one to deal with it." Although the lame man seemed to be the youngest among the three, Shining could tell that his legwork had at least 20 years of strength behind it. Big White dealing with ordinary folks with his charging skills was no problem, but he definitely wouldn't be a match for this one. But at this moment, the lame man suddenly showed a ferocious smile and said, "What about you? What about me, Panda? Let me give you a mark first." Chapter 174. Speaking, he lurched forward on his lame leg with a swell, bringing up a gust of wind as he struck out at Big White. Just as Morong was about to draw his sword to block him, Panda Dabai suddenly lunged forward, unexpectedly charging towards the lame leg. This truly caught Morong off guard. The distance between man and bear was extremely short, and they were rushing towards each other. Morong no longer had time to help. "Big White, be careful." At that moment, the lame man laughed even more joyously, his thick leg turning into a blur as he kicked towards Big White's head. Not to mention a flesh and blood bear, his kick could penetrate even iron. With a thud, the lame leg collided with Big White, but the expected scene of Big White's bones and flesh shattering did not occur. Big White raised its front paw, actually managing to block the kick. The force of the kick was indeed fierce. Even with Big White's size, it slid a distance across the ground on 3 paws. But in an instant it steadied itself and stood straight up. Its front paws swung, instantly becoming a blur, as both Duan Yun and Shining simultaneously exclaimed, 16 Road Chi. Big White stood on its hind legs, like a human, and began to unleash fist technique, with 3 forms of it nearly merging into one. Woof! In the next moment, Big White had already thrown a punch, with its massive bear paw turning into a fist. It struck with terrifying force at the lame man. In just an instant, the shadow of the bear paw engulfed the lame man's head. The lame man was taken aback and, caught off guard by Big White's momentum, he kicked out in panic to defend. With a bang, the bear's fist smashed into the lame man's large shoe sole. The shoe exploded, and the lame man fell flat on the ground. But Big White's assault did not stop. The bear's body sank down, following through like persistent maggots on bones. With a crack, the bear's mouth had bitten the lame man's shoulder. The lame man cried out in pain, about to counterattack, when Big White tossed its head back, sending the man flying into the air. As he descended, he was met by a leap from Big White, its fist as large as a casserole pot. With a bang, the lame man's face was hit. His teeth flew as he shot out like a cannonball, crashing into the ground. After dragging a distance on the ground, he struggled to get up, but could not manage to do so. Not just the lame man, but even the fighter Shining had to marvel at Big White's fist technique, especially the smart timing of seizing and striking. While the lame man was hammered down by the panda, the other 2 lame men were also startled. And as they were caught off guard, Morong had already glided over. He was originally standing, but with a slide, he moved as though he was swimming across the ground. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Sword lights slashed like a whip, colliding with the lame legs, creating splendid sparks. This showed the hardness of those lame legs. The 2 lame men reacted and began to counterattack, but it was too late. Their lame legs could withstand Morong's sword, but unfortunately, the rest of their bodies could not. With 2 screams, the other legs and a palm of both men were severed, truly making them lame. At this time, Duan Yun said, "Let me handle this." Beaming divine skill, Duan Yun stood among the three fallen lame men, his body suddenly emitting a terrifying suction force. With a thud, the one knocked down by Big White was the first to be sucked over, sticking to Duan Yun's back, his head a blur. Ghosts! The remaining two lame men desperately clung to the ground with their hands. But as the soil and wild grass were scattered with two swishing sounds, they too were sucked over. Thus, Duan Yun suddenly grew 3 people on his body, their heads a blur from the suction. Even having known Duan Yun for sufficiently long, understanding his rookie nature and misfortune-prone physique, Feng Linger and the others still watched with trepidation as the 3 lame men struggled in vain to escape from the suction. Is this cultivation technique too evil? I want to be a hero. As they were sucked into a blur, the 3 lame men suddenly spoke in unison. At this, all the hairs on Feng Linger's body stood on end. Morong and Shen Ying, however, maintained better composure because they could tell this was a variation of Duan Yun's divine skill of draining true qi from the top of people's heads. At this moment, Duan Yun sensed the intentions of the 3 lame men and muttered, "The 9th day of the 10th month. There's wine in the sky. Atop the graveyard, night fishing for Azure Dragon? Night fishing for Azure Dragon." Hearing this phrase, the expressions of Morong, Feng Linger, and Shen Ying all changed. In Duan Yun's eyes, they seemed to hear about the most sinister and terrifying thing in the world. Could there be anything more fearsome than old demon Duan? Chapter 175. Extraordinary Wisdom in Action. Medical Practitioner's Compassionate Heart. Fingertip Thunder. Seeing the expressions on the Morong brothers' faces, Duan Yun carefully tended to the crippled men. As he took in true qi, he also infused them with heroic spirit and asked, "What's with those expressions of yours? Don't tell me there really is an Azure Dragon in this world." At this moment, the consciousness of the 3 crippled men was somewhat blurred, and they did not perceive everything very clearly. Still, the matter of the Azure Dragon was indeed what the 3 of them were most concerned about. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sensed it so suddenly. The Morong brothers nodded their heads. Thud, thud, thud. With a shake, Duan Yun had dropped the 3 crippled men onto the ground, their faces wearing blank, idiotic expressions. On the 9th day of the 10th lunar month, there is wine in the heavens, atop the graveyard, night fishing for the Azure Dragon. What exactly does this mean? The Morong brothers looked at him and said, "You've said it yourself. It means there's a dragon that's about to appear in this area." "There really is a dragon?" Duan Yun exclaimed in surprise. "Not only is there one, but if an Azure Dragon were to appear, it would be a major event in the martial world, each time resulting in the death of many. The Azure Dragon treasure has always been considered a miracle, on par with the 12 divine valleys. The last time an Azure Dragon appeared was over 200 years ago." With that, the Morong brothers glanced at Shen Ying and said, "Your elders must have told you the story of the Azure Dragon by the Great Ming Lake." Shen Ying nodded and replied, "I've heard it. I used to be so fascinated by it as a child, yet at the same time terrified." Afterward, the Morong brothers told Duan Yun a story about fishing for the Azure Dragon by the Great Ming Lake. 200 years ago, the Great Ming Lake probably didn't differ much from how it is today, with beautiful scenery and clusters of lotus leaves. Back then, Jinan Prefecture by the Great Ming Lake was also bustling, with people coming and going. But that spring, an odd occurrence took place in Jinan Prefecture. More than one person claimed that the fish in the lake could talk. Some people were terrified by the event, thinking it was the work of ghosts or monsters, and dared not go near the lake. Yet, others were curious and excited, happily going there, hoping to hear what the fish had to say and perhaps uncover some major secret. Of course, those who were heavily led by their curiosity were usually martial artists. Martial artists just can't resist a crowd. Even Duan Yun, a newbie in the martial world, knew that every year a significant number of martial world folks died from being overly curious spectators. And those who were curious to hear the fish talk did indeed hear something. The fish's speech closely resembled the words spoken by Duan Yun today. "On the 2nd day of the 2nd lunar month, the dragon raises its head, by the Great Ming Lake, moon fishing for the azure dragon. The strange phenomenon of talking fish frightened people, yet also excited them. Because within the martial arts, there was a saying, "When a dragon falls, 10,000 thrive." It was claimed that a dragon's body was treasure-laden, especially the dragon essence within. If consumed, it could allow one to surpass the heavenly human barrier and become invincible in the world. Some enterprising individuals caught the talking fish, and upon slicing open their bellies, they discovered a page of oiled paper inside. The oiled paper, on which was written the fish's moon-related speech, contained a map of the Great Ming Lake. Jinan Prefecture was already the most prosperous city in Qingzhou, with plenty of Jianghu people. Now, with the news, even more martial artists flocked here. It was indeed a gathering of heroes and a chaotic dance of devils. Be it the righteous or the demonic factions, adopting the belief of better to believe it to be true than to miss the opportunity. All were eager to have a share of the action. On the second day of the second lunar month, the dragon raises its head. That evening, the moonlight was frosty. As the Murong brothers got to this part of the story, their tone lightened a bit, casting an even more mysterious hue over the narrative. Clearly, he had been influenced by old Gua, who had been storytelling a couple of days ago. That night, it was said that the banks of the Great Ming Lake were crowded with Jianghu people, and the boats on the lake were packed with people. The azure dragon did not appear, but the martial world folks already had several fights among themselves. Suddenly, a giant azure dragon burst out of the water, as if to swallow the moon. According to the Murong brothers' portrayal, the azure dragon must have been enormous, though it differed somewhat from the legendary dragons, resembling more a big green Jiao dragon, yet to fully transform into a dragon. When the martial world folks suddenly saw such a big creature that night, some were scared, but many more were crazed. The azure dragon had indeed appeared. It was said that the azure dragon could fly, though not very high, and soon encountered people. Even though many in the martial world were thick-skinned and tough, they were practically like mice in comparison to the flood dragon. Startled, the azure dragon began to kill and devour people, but on that night by the Great Ming Lake, not all were easy prey. There were also high-level experts from both the righteous and demonic paths. Seeing the azure dragon appear, many did not retreat but instead became bloodthirsty, rushing forward thinking of the dragon meat and dragon essence. The azure dragon was covered in green scale armor, difficult for ordinary Jianghu experts to penetrate, but the sheer number and frenzy of the Jianghu people proved too much to withstand, and they entered a crazed, life-risking state. Injured, the azure dragon made its way from the lake's edge to the city of Jinan, and was again surrounded by the relentless martial world folks inflicting countless deaths and injuries. That night, it was said the water of the Great Ming Lake was dyed red, and the moon reflected in it took on a crimson hue. After being severely wounded, the azure dragon flew some distance before ultimately falling in a mountain hollow. After its fall, it was naturally skinned and deboned, its body gutted. But as for the squabble over the azure dragon, the martial world folks engaged in several more rounds of bloody combat. Not only ordinary Jianghu people lost their lives, but many experts fell as well. Opportunity always falls to the lucky. It was said that within the body of the azure dragon were 3 dragon essences. Before dying, it spat them out of its mouth, scattering them through the woods, where, by fortune, 2 were obtained by a Wuming Taoist. This Taoist was a nobody, not even holding a duty, essentially the lowest of the low among the martial world. Yet, after swallowing the dragon essence, this nameless man with little foundation saw his strength surge. At that time, some experts wanted to devour his flesh and blood on the spot to absorb the dragon essence, but they were easily slain by him instead. Chapter 176. Behind, a dragon claw sect suddenly emerged in Qingzhou. It sounded insignificant, but at the time they could capture anyone they desired. The Thunderbolt Hall of Qingzhou was also considered a local hegemon, but the Dragonclaw sect took a disliking to them and directly captured and killed the Thunderbolt Hall master within his own hall. At that time, heroine Feng Ying of the Huangshan sword sect, widely regarded as one of the top 10 female swordsmen of her era, was captured by the sect leader of the Dragonclaw sect, the Dragonclaw Taoist, with just 2 moves. leaving her garments torn and tattered. Naturally, the sect leader of the Dragon Claw sect, the Dragon Claw Taoist, was that woming Taoist who had obtained the dragon essence. His dragon claw hand was unmatched under the heavens. It was said that his claws had already grown covered in azure dragon scales and were no longer human. Not to mention him, the claw skills of the disciples he taught were also bizarre and formidable, incredibly swift and fierce. At that time, the 6 major demonic claws of his sect could really capture anyone they wanted, wherever they wanted. Even many notable figures of the martial world and their ladies and daughters who suffered at the hands of the dragon claw could only feel helpless. With the help of 2 dragon essences, a previously unknown Taoist and his dragon claw sect became one of the hegemonies of the martial world, truly a transformation of a flood dragon soaring into the sky. The dragon claw Taoist was the biggest beneficiary of the Azure Dragon incident. At that time, many who had consumed dragon meat and gained dragon tendons. Many of these people later joined the Dragon Claw sect, becoming stronger and fiercer, ascending more than just one level. However, the story of the Dragon Claw Taoist and the sudden rise of the Dragon Claw sect came to an abrupt end 56 years later. In the 2nd month of the year, on the day when dragons raised their heads, the Dragon Claw Taoist and half of his disciples died a mysterious and violent death. The Dragon Claw sect, being without a leader, fell into disarray, previously having antagonized those they should not have. The surviving disciples who left the Dragon Claw sect also met a very tragic end. Upon hearing this, Duan Yun couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Dead!" Shuning took over the conversation. When my father told me this, he speculated that the dragon essence was not something ordinary people could withstand, or perhaps it was a poison in itself that could greatly increase one's strength but also caused violent death. Some even say it was the vengeful spirit of the Azure Dragon claiming lives. So many people are after it, even though it can cause violent death? Duan Yun couldn't help but say, 56 years, how many years does a person live? 2 dragon essences could turn an ordinary Taoist into a local hegemon, who could capture anyone he wanted for 56 years. Isn't that a huge temptation? The Murong brothers said. Thinking about it, Duan Yun felt it made sense. The Taoist was certainly no child when he obtained the dragon essence, and 56 years later, he would definitely be a true old man. This was akin to a salted fish turning into a dragon and exploiting the system for 56 years. Let alone common folk of the martial world. Even he, a 1 in 10,000 cultivation prodigy, felt somewhat envious. Being able to capture whoever you wanted, wherever you wanted, was something he estimated would take him a long time to achieve. This was purely a cheat. The Azure Dragon's advent being compared to the 12 Divine Valleys must also be for this reason. Both actually shared a characteristic. They allowed one to undergo a transformation and possess tremendous combat power, just like the woming Taoist who mastered the Dragon Claw hand, like the Murong ancestor who cultivated the 12 layers of spring rain. Now, with so many people from the martial world coming to the small Yushur town, it became understandable. In this world obsessed with strength to the point of madness, not many could resist such a temptation. Of course, Duan Yun could resist, because he was a 1 in 10,000 cultivation prodigy who preferred to stand above the rest through his own efforts. Such dangerous things were not something he'd try lightly. At this moment, Duan Yun recalled something and said, "Why would the Azure Dragon come to our poverty-stricken place? Could it be false news?" The Murong brothers nodded. It's possible, because there have been 3 instances of false news on the martial world before, but as long as there's hope, even if it's fake, plenty of people will believe it. What if it's true? Thinking of the story told by the Murong brothers, Duan Yun realized a rather frightening fact. It was that during the Azure Dragon's appearance, many people died, Jianghu people, masters of both the righteous and demonic paths, commoners of Jinan Prefecture. Too many people in the martial world saw only the immense benefits gained by others, rising with the wind, able to capture whoever they wanted, but overlooked this point. However, being blinded by the desire for power and scrupulously seeking strength was the underlying theme of this martial world. At this time, one of the cripples suddenly rose on one foot, his eyes fierce. "I want to be a hero." Observing him, Duan Yun asked, Heroes are honest folks. Tell me, how did you come across this information? The cripple immediately knelt down, gazing steadfastly at Duan Yun. O master of heroic spirit, I'll tell you everything. Afterward, he began to describe the sequence of events. Just as the Murong brothers guessed, they were indeed practicing the heavenly broken foot. However, they hadn't apprenticed under the heavenly ruin sect to learn the technique. Instead, they acquired the cultivation technique from Wang Jinshui, a discarded disciple of the heavenly ruin sect. They didn't have any official school, and the 4 disciples had always been operating around Yunli Mountain, not far from here. But a few days ago, something strange happened on the mountain. There weren't many people in the mountain, yet at night fires would be lit and voices heard. The nearby villagers always thought it was haunted. Curious folks got wind of this and sneaked over to investigate, only to discover those were groups of foxes. Yunli Mountain had always had foxes, so this wasn't so surprising. But the odd thing was that these foxes could talk. The words they spoke were, "On the 9th day of the 10th month, there's wine in the sky. Atop the graveyard at night, fish for the azure dragon." Some curious onlookers wanted to catch the foxes to see what was going on. Chapter 177. But those foxes were alarmingly alert, disappearing quickly without a trace. Someone arrived at the campfire where the foxes had previously gathered, and discovered a bluestone slab. On the bluestone slab, not only were the words recited by the foxes inscribed, but also a simplified map. And that map was precisely of the graveyard near Yushur town. Thus, the 3 of them hastened there without stopping. Hearing this, Duan Yun thought of a question and asked, "What about your master?" "Our master was already poisoned and secretly killed by us. He was a discarded disciple, and we also liked being discarded disciples." Saying so, he revealed a horrifying smile. "Lord of heroic spirit, I want to become a hero." Duan Yun asked, "What do you want to do once you become a hero?" I want to kill the person I hate the most." "Whom do you hate the most?" "I used to hate my master the most, but now I hate my eldest brother the most. He always wears brighter and more colorful clothes than me." As he spoke, he suddenly looked towards his elder brother on the ground. His head slammed down like a heavy hammer. With a thud, the elder brother was still stupefied when his neck was broken and he died instantly. At that moment, this person looked fiercely at the 3rd brother and said, "The eldest brother is dead. 3rd brother, you are now the one who should die the most. That day when you raped that red-haired woman, she was dead before letting me." Saying this, he repeated the action and slammed his own 3rd brother to death. "That!" Duan Yun tried to speak, but the bloodied man interrupted. "Don't talk. The 3rd brother is dead. Now I am a hero, and I want to kill the person I most want to kill." "Ah, who does this hero want to kill the most?" "Me. The person I want to kill the most is me? Yes. I hate myself so much. Why do I look so handsome and start losing hair after practicing the heavenly mutilated leg? Ah!" Saying so, the cripple with one leg raised it up fiercely and smashed it down on his own forehead. Thus he too died. Seeing this scene, not to mention Fenglinger, even Murong brothers and Shining, who knew quite a bit about Duan Yun, were stunned and even a bit scared. This is the price to pay for following old demon Duan to become a hero. Brothers devastating each other, ultimately culminating in suicide. Duan Yun deeply inhaled and said, "This person is not so great, but his courage at the end is commendable. To personally kill one's brothers and oneself, even young hero Duan did not have such resolute courage." Although the 3 were dead, Duan Yun and the others obtained an extremely useful piece of information. That was, all the Jianghu people here were here for the Azure Dragon treasure. And from the cripple's words, there was still a possibility of the Azure Dragon re-emerging. Because speaking foxes and speaking fish could be referred as mirroring extraordinary phenomena. 6 days until the 9th of October, Shining suddenly said. "Will it be a river of blood again in 6 days?" The Murong brothers said somberly. Each time the Azure Dragon appeared, it inevitably resulted in a river of blood. Not just the Azure Dragon killing people, but also people killing each other over the treasure. The situation seemed far more severe than they had imagined. Last time, a Wuming Taoist obtained the dragon essence, but it didn't mean only the common folks wanted it. Experts would not miss out on such a secret treasure, nor would they want other experts to possess it. That meant, in this small region around Yushur town, many experts were hidden. Even if the three of them joined forces with old Demon Duan, they probably couldn't suppress these experts. No, when the situation reached its peak of chaos, they might even struggle to protect their own villa. In front of a blood-soaked torrent, individuals often are powerless, just as people overwhelmed by a surging crowd while shopping. Being able to go with the flow is good enough. The unlucky ones might even get trampled to death. It's just past midnight. Look how many people have already died. Plus, there are 3 fresh corpses that need to be buried. At this moment, the 3 involuntarily looked at Duan Yun. Shining couldn't help asking, "What are you thinking of doing?" Inside Yuzhu Villa, the weakest would take action, but the strongest would decide the policy. Duan Yun thought for a long time and said, "If many people are truly going to die this time, I want to be a doctor." "Ah?" Duan Yun said seriously, "My extraordinary wisdom. It's time to apply it to medicine." "Ah?" For him not considering becoming a hero, the 3 were somewhat surprised. At night, Shining, Fenglinger, and the Murong brothers did not sleep very well. Thinking that the Azure Dragon might appear, no one could sleep peacefully, but they eventually dozed off in a daze. Suddenly, they were awakened by a roar. "Extraordinary wisdom. I command you to keep turning. Comprehend. Medical practitioner's compassionate heart. Fingertip thunder." Chapter 178. This is really a great patient to treat. This time, Duan Yun was practicing locked in his own room. As such, the 3 Murong brothers outside the room could only hear his roars but couldn't see how he was practicing. Suddenly, electric lights flickered in the dark room, outlining a figure. When did he learn the moves of the Thunder God and Mother sect? Shining wondered. "I don't know. You're so close to him and you don't know. How would I know?" said the Murong brothers. The flickering lights continued, and the shadow cast on the window paper, along with Duan Yun's roars, made the 3 Murong brothers feel the person was both maniacal and mad, even somewhat divine and demonic. At least at that moment, young hero Duan seemed like old demon Duan. After that, the room became quiet. Shining puzzled. Is it over? Maybe he failed to master it and took a rest because he was tired, Fenglinger said with concern. Perhaps, replied the Murong brothers. After all, cultivation is never an instant success. Yet, looking at that pitch-dark room, he feared that the guy might suddenly start cursing again and then achieve a breakthrough. He was familiar with such events. However, they waited for the duration it takes to drink 2 cups of tea, and it remained silent inside. It seems he really didn't make it this time. Later, the 3 of them went back to their own beds to sleep. In the early morning, the Murong brothers came out from the outhouse, planning to go back to sleep. He noticed that Duan Yun was already up, his hair somewhat messy and sticking up, as if it had been clawed at by a woman during night activities. He couldn't help but ask, "Were you practicing something last night?" "Medicinal techniques," Duan Yun replied. "Any progress?" Murong brothers cared to ask. "I mastered it," Duan Yun said. "Mastered it." Murong stood there, baffled. Just a couple of shouts last night and he mastered it? What Murong brothers didn't know was that Duan Yun thought that as a medic, he shouldn't be a hero and could be a bit more graceful. Indeed, he wanted to shout when he started practicing, but refrained due to his desire for elegance. However, later on, due to the difficulty of mastering medicinal techniques, comparable to inventing a cultivation technique, he thought if he didn't shout a couple of times to get his extraordinary wisdom flowing, he might need to struggle all night to succeed. Thus, Duan Yun shouted. After the shout, indeed, he managed to control the fingertip thunder. And then he elegantly went to sleep. That's why they only heard Duan Yun shout twice and nothing followed. No other, the elegance of a medic. At this time, Shining also got up and saw the bewildered look on Murong brothers' face and asked, "What happened?" "He said he succeeded," the Murong brothers replied. "Ah?" At that moment, Duan Yun had returned from the outhouse. He glanced at Murong Brothers, who was still standing there, and asked, "Got a moment?" "Yes, why?" responded Murong Brothers. "Let me see your left hand," Duan Yun said. Murong Brothers stretched out his left hand. The next moment, Murong Brothers' eyes nearly popped out. Almost simultaneously, Duan Yun unexpectedly made a swift cut on his hand. The gentle knife left a clean cut on the former owner's arm, causing blood to surge. Murong Brothers were stunned, his face both baffled and terrified. "Why did you suddenly chop me?" He thought Duan Yun must have gone mad. Old demon Duan's cultivation drove him mad. Not far away, Shining was also shocked. She clearly saw Murong Brothers extending his hand, and then Duan Yun made a cut on it. One really dared to cut, the other was so idiotic he didn't even dodge. "Fingertip thunder! Come forth!" Duan Yun suddenly shouted. At this, Murong Brothers got so frightened that all his hairs stood on end, instinctively trying to retreat. But at this moment, Duan Yun had already grabbed his hand, saying sternly, "You haven't been treated yet. Where are you running off to?" "I'm going back to sleep." Murong was so scared that he hurriedly pulled away and ran, only to hear a sizzling sound as a bolt of electricity leapt into his forehead. In an instant, his hair stood on end, and his whole body stiffened. The very next moment, electricity danced between the fingers of Duan Yun's right hand, almost forming a fine net, and gathered at Murong's wound. Sizzle, sizzle. A smell of charred flesh floated up, and Murong's wound was no longer bleeding. Even the flesh seemed fused together. In Xinying's eyes, those tiny sparks looked just like a needle and thread, stitching up Murong's wound. Duan Yun took a look at Murong's wound and said, "Apart from a bit of charring, the results aren't bad." Previously, when absorbing the thunder true chi of the Thunder God and Mother Sex Thunder Maniac, Duan Yun discovered this true chi was quite special, as its power of thunder and lightning could simply stop bleeding. He had long thought if this thunder and lightning power could be obedient and precise, then with more experimentation, it could perhaps achieve effects like stopping bleeding, suturing, and calming the patient with electrotherapy. Duan Yun already had experience taming demon electricity. Last night, as he earnestly gained enlightenment, the power of the thunder true chi he released was gradually tamed by him. However, he had to admit, the power of thunder and lightning must be among the hardest to tame in the world. It's so wild that once it manifests, it's difficult to control, even wilder than the wildest horse. To make it totally obedient, even for him, a rare cultivation prodigy, took a full 3 hours barely managing it, severely affecting his sleep. But the result was beneficial. At least now Murong was very calm, and his wound had stopped bleeding and was healed. Stopping bleeding, suturing, and calming, the basic effects were somewhat achieved. During the meal, Murong couldn't help but complain. "Why did you use me for experimentation?" Duan Yun earnestly replied. "Shining was making breakfast. Besides, she and Miss Linger are pretty, and have good skin. My skills aren't yet perfected. I might leave scars." Murong said with a hurt expression, "I'm so pale, aren't you afraid I'll scar?" Saying so, he raised the scarred wound caused by Duan Yun. Duan Yun pondered, "It's not too bad. You already have plenty of scars on your body. Once my fingertip thunder gets more honed, perhaps it can even be used for scar removal and beauty enhancement. When the time comes, I'll remove all your scars and even style your hair as a way to repay you for being my patient." Seeing Duan Yun's look, Murong felt a chill. "What are you looking at me for? You surely can't still use me for experimentation, right?" Duan Yun, looking at him, earnestly nodded. Murong got angry. "Why? Why don't you practice on yourself?" Duan Yun replied, "Actually, I considered that, but treating oneself has limitations. Plus, I need to increase the intensity later, and if I get seriously injured, it won't be easy to manage. Most importantly, I'm better looking than you. Increase the intensity, serious injury. Better looking?" Hearing these words, Murong was about to go mad. New rule of the Yuzhu Villa: the ugliest person is suitable to be a medical experiment subject. Who agrees and who opposes? Said Duan Yun. I agree. Xining and Feng Linger said in unison. I oppose. Morong's face turned purple as he vehemently objected. At this moment, he suddenly placed down his utensils and jumped in front of Panda Dabai, who was eating bamboo. Compared to Dabai, I'm not the ugliest, right? For a moment, Morong felt utterly heartbroken. Thinking he used to be the handsome and extraordinary young master of the Morong family, captivating countless half-sisters, and now after 2 years of neglect, he could only compare his looks to a panda. In the end, Duan Yun still spared him. Due to his looks, although not as good as Panda Dabai, were still slightly better than a gray donkey. Little Gray, come here. In the backyard, Little Gray was eating grass when Duan Yun couldn't help but call out. Hearing Duan Yun calling it, Little Gray ran over innocently, even seeming happy. Duan Yun struck out with his hand, and the onlooking Morong and 2 others couldn't help but squint their eyes. It's doable to kill without blinking an eye, but seeing Little Gray's innocent expression was indeed a bit cruel. Feng Linger and Xining even thought it would be better to switch Morong with Little Gray. Duan Yun's sword finger paused on Little Gray, not thrusting down. He suddenly turned around and said, I think we need to catch a couple of evil demons. Morong said, Right, there are martial world people all over Yushur town. Definitely no shortage of evil demons. Catch a couple, injure them, heal them, and thoroughly experiment. Surely good results will come. Just then, Duan Yun said, I just thought of someone. Who? Old Gua. Chapter 179. Fingertip thunder is under my control. A divine doctor is expected. During this period, Old Gua was in a great mood. Seeing a tea house full of listeners, eager to hear his stories, he felt a special sense of achievement. Bloodthirsty storytellers do not fear death. This fulfillment is what they thrive on. As long as he has this full sense of achievement, even a broken leg is no worry. Honestly, it had been a long time since his legs were broken. Old Gua guessed that those who had been breaking his legs repeatedly were probably the same group of people, or perhaps one individual. Everyone speculated that it was professional jealousy. After all, not everyone could perform bloodthirsty storytelling, nor could they gain fame around Wangchun City by narrating stories of Old Demon Duan. The popularity of Old Demon Duan had turned into his bounties. Old Gua guessed it must have been Old Demon Duan's followers. Now, when mentioning Old Demon Duan, many people would also think of him, the storyteller. His experiences of having his legs broken numerous times were not his pain, but rather his trademark, his pride. Why was it only him whose legs were broken several times, and not other colleagues? Could only mean that he told stories exceptionally well. Even some of his peers seriously suspected that he was using a ruse, deliberately finding people to break his legs so as to gain fame. During this period, Yushur town was bustling with people. Just like the tea house owner, storyteller Old Gua was also visionary, or else he wouldn't have left the already lively small spring town to start anew in Yushur town, closer to the graveyard. He couldn't help it, thinking of being so close to the graveyard where Old Demon Duan became famous. He was very excited and inspired for his writings. Telling stories here, he was no doubt happy. This was also one of the reasons for his choice. And the recent substantial increase in bounties proved his choice to be exceptionally right. Old Gua's career was at its peak, and it's common for people to get a little inflated at their peak. Old Gua was no exception. For instance, recently he had been reflecting that nobody has been breaking his legs for a while, and he was somewhat unaccustomed to it. Although he didn't walk very nimbly, he no longer needed a walking stick. Perhaps that follower of Old Demon Duan had died. It was easy for people to die in the martial world, especially as followers of Old Demon Duan. Otherwise, with his stories about old demons stirring things up to this extent, why had no one come to break his legs? During the noon break, Old Gua went to relieve himself, as was his custom. He planned to enjoy a good cup of tea before heading back out. Letting the customers wait, making them anxious, was also one of the pleasures of storytelling. Without these pleasures, who would still tell stories? Just as Old Gua was in the outhouse, planning to leisurely enjoy his cup of tea, a familiar darkness fell before his eyes. A sack covered him from head to toe. His instinct was to be scared, but he quickly calmed down. After all, he had been through this many times. Thinking of his imminent broken leg, Old Gua felt a sudden thrill. They were back. The followers of Old Demon were back. My glory would have another tale. But this time, Old Gua waited for a long time and his leg didn't break. He just heard a smack, and while in the sack, his head was knocked, and everything went dark. Could it be a kidnapping? This was the last thought in Old Gua's mind before he lost consciousness. In the dim cellar, Old Gua remained unconscious. Duan Yun, the doctor with a medical practitioner's compassionate heart, quietly observed him as if looking at a patient suffering from a serious illness, in dire need of treatment. When bringing people in, he accidentally stepped on Old Gua's mouth with shoes smeared with donkey dung. It was truly an accident, absolutely not personal animosity. As a young hero, he never held grudges, and as a doctor, he treated everyone equally. As the only patient in the cellar at the moment, naturally, he was going all out. Under the watchful eyes of the Murong brothers, with a swish and without any hesitation, Duan Yun released the jade sword finger sword energy from his right hand, piercing through Old Gua's thigh. Old Gua, originally unconscious, suddenly shuddered in pain. But the next moment his expression relaxed, and he didn't wake up. Duan Yun's fingertip thunder had entered his wound and his brow. Electrical entry at the brow can alleviate pain, as Duan Yun had verified on the Murong brothers. Whatever the Murong brothers said about their heads getting numb from the electricity, that numbness was pain relief with no issues at all. The electric light wove like silk, suturing the bloody hole, accompanied by the scent of scorched flesh and blood from the electrical burn. This experience reminded Duan Yun of his previous life's metalworking internship with electric welding. Actually, the principle was quite similar. Welding fuses metal together, while his fingertip thunder fuses wounds. This bloody hole was deeper and more severe than the wounds that the Murong brothers received from knife cuts. But the bleeding stopped rapidly, in the blink of an eye. Afterward, Duan Yun's electric light still flickered at his fingertips, without pause. Without any hesitation, Duan Yun made another incision on Old Gua's abdomen. Old Gua was a bit overweight, and just as his belly slid open, the electric light was already zipping through, welding his flesh and grease together. As new wounds continually appeared on Old Gua's body and were healed by the electric light in turn, Duan Yun's fingertip thunder became even more adept. At that moment, with a swipe of his left hand through his hair, the strands on his forehead fluttered up silkily and drifted backward, forming a new hairstyle that made him look quite spirited. Feng Linger and the other three onlookers didn't dare to let out a breath while watching. They had never seen anyone practice medical skills in such a manner. In this eerie cellar, this was hardly a scene of a doctor and patient. Feng Linger stammered, "It looks more like an autopsy." But they had to admit that Duan Yun was truly formidable at this. Even the famous doctors in the martial world probably couldn't stop bleeding and heal wounds as quickly as this. Old Gua had at least 18 wounds on his legs, some connecting to form various Zheng characters, and yet not 2 drops of blood had flown from Old Gua. Suddenly, Duan Yun lifted his finger and stabbed a bloody hole in his own shoulder, which at almost the same time sent out electric light that sizzled to close up the wound. Feng Linger anxiously said, "Why is he doing that to himself?" Upon seeing this, Shan Ing commented, "You didn't mind the 38 wounds on Old Gua's body, yet you're nervous about him poking himself once?" Murong brothers couldn't help but ask, "You're already so skilled. What are you still practicing for?" "I'm practicing connecting tendons and blood vessels properly. If a person is injured, it is essential to reconnect the blood vessels and tendons. I understand my body better," Duan Yun stated. Hearing this statement, everyone just felt terrified. Feng Linger voiced concern. "Are you sure about this? If you're not certain, maybe let Old Gua try first." Currently, Old Gua was drowsy, feeling as if he were in a dream where it alternately leaked and then stopped raining at his house, giving him a horrific sensation. "I've discovered that if the electric light spirals, it can not only connect flesh and blood, but can also stimulate their vitality to become stronger. Don't worry, the tendon and blood vessel I'm working on are not vital. It's just that I can't anesthetize myself, so it hurts a bit," Duan Yun couldn't help saying, "Is there a way to relieve the pain?" Shining asked, concerned. "Yes. What is it?" "First, get the book from inside my jacket," Duan Yun said. Shining hurriedly reached into his jacket and took out a book titled Old Demon and Goddess Catcher's Secret Cellar. "Turn to page 23, Duan Yun instructed. Xin Ying's face turned green as she asked in surprise, "Are you sure it's this one?" "Yes, it's this one," Duan Yun asserted. Shining glanced at the page and saw it detailed the experience of old demon Duan treating Goddess Catcher's wounds in the cellar, with descriptions of bare fragrant shoulders, a purple semi-transparent belly band, and the more absurd, the better. Duan Yun did indeed stop feeling the pain and regained his focus. Right. Spin. Keep spinning. Duan Yun looked at the page and spoke earnestly. Zzzt, zzzt, zzzt. The electric light continued to emanate from the wound on his shoulder, now clearly following a regular arc. In Xin Ying and the other's eyes, it was like a series of tiny rainbow bridges. He really could control such fine trajectories of electric light. Right. Push harder. Duan Yun continued to read from the book. For a moment, Xin Ying and the others weren't certain whether he was urging old demon Duan in the book to push harder on Goddess Catcher, or for the electric light to push harder. Suddenly, the tiny electric lights intensified and all concentrated towards the inside of the wound. 2 breaths later, Duan Yun let out a sigh of relief and declared, "I did it! I've mastered it. The spiraling electric light is truly magical." "Did you connect the blood vessels and tendons?" the Morong brothers asked. "I did, perfectly aligned. I even feel stronger," Duan Yun replied while moving his shoulders. "Does that mean you could easily reconnect a severed hand or foot?" the Morong brothers said, amazed. "Of course. Although I still can't regenerate limbs, reattaching them for immediate use is not a problem," Duan Yun said seriously. "Regenerating limbs, as if you could fly." The Morong brothers originally wanted to ridicule Duan Yun's fantastical thinking, but was reattaching tendons and blood vessels with electric light not preposterous enough? What if one day old demon Duan actually did master limb regeneration with a sudden shout? Who can say for certain when it comes to the affairs of old demon Duan? At this time, Duan Yun looked at his own wound, gathered the electric light at his fingertips, and swiped over the wound. The flesh that was previously scorched by the electric light instantly disappeared, becoming smooth and clean. The Morong brothers were shocked again and said, "You can really erase scars?" Duan Yun nodded. "If I control it delicately enough, erasing scars, blemishes, even full cosmetic enhancement is not an issue at all." At this, the Morong brothers' tone softened as they said, "Brother, you promised to clear them up for me." Feng Linger's tone also softened as she said, "Duan, can you remove moles? I have a mole on my waist. Could you please remove it for me?" Shining joined in as well. "I have a patch on my arm where the skin tone isn't very even." On the ground lay old Gua, his legs covered in jung-shaped scars, his brows furrowed, barely conscious, and no one caring. If he were to wake up and see his scar-covered legs while hearing the discussion about scar removal, mole removal, and even skin tone, he would surely believe it was a bizarre dream full of lunatics and madmen. Chapter 180. Initial Effects of the Divine Doctor. Old Gua faces calamity. Old Gua left. He was sent away. He was confusedly stuffed into a sack to arrive, and confusedly stuffed into a sack to be sent away. He only felt like he had experienced a bizarre dream. In the dream, his body felt like it was leaking, and someone seemed to be writing on his body. He vaguely heard phrases like, "My skin tone isn't even," "I also want to remove that mole inside," "Come inside the room with me," "Let's experiment on Old Gua first," and other nonsensical words. After that, Old Gua suddenly woke up and found himself lying on a street, surrounded by a crowd of old ladies and men. Is this small spring town? These people were looking at him, pointing and discussing. Old Gua, out of habit, reached for his leg and was surprised to find it unbroken. But the next moment, he was so scared he almost jumped. The reason was that his pants were reduced to just the lower part of his underpants. and his thighs were filled with the character Zheng. No, not just the thighs, but even his belly. These Zheng characters seemed like scars, deeply inscribed in flesh and blood, yet they didn't feel very painful. What is this obsession with engraving the character Zheng? I heard some masters have done this before, liking to mark people's bodies. But aren't these marks a bit too excessive? Wait, isn't this person the storyteller Old Gua? Upon hearing someone recognize him, Old Gua quickly covered his thighs with both hands and ran out. As he ran, the mocking from the crowd grew even louder. The key issue was the excessive amount of Zheng characters on his legs, which he couldn't hide at all, coupled with his ultra-short pants and belly-showing outfit, attracting lots of attention. Do storytellers even need to do such things? Some powerful and influential patrons have quite strange fetishes. Old Gua, with legs full of Zheng characters, rushed back home in his short pants and quickly changed into new clothes, covering himself up tightly. He remembered being covered by the sack in the morning, and now it was already afternoon. He had intended to make his listeners wait anxiously, and indeed they had waited long enough. At that moment, Old Gua's wife heard the noise and came over. Seeing Old Gua sorting his clothes, she couldn't help but express her frustration. "The boss has been to our house looking for you a few times. Where did you run off to?" "I have no idea," Old Gua said nervously. The events of today were too bizarre. Even Old Gua himself couldn't understand what exactly happened, where he had been, and his head felt heavy as if he had traveled to some terrifying realm. But as a bloodthirsty storyteller, how could he not tell stories? Having prepared himself, Old Gua planned to continue storytelling. Since he hadn't lost his legs, why not continue telling stories? Today's incident must have been the work of old Demon Duan's followers, trying to scare me, Old Gua? No way. Old Gua had been a bloodthirsty storyteller not just for a day or two. Suddenly, his desire to tell stories surged again, and he quickly got ready and left. Old Gua returned to the tea house. The owner initially wanted to scold him, but upon seeing him, he calmed down significantly without even hearing an explanation, and even looked concerned as he advised him to prepare for possibly getting hit. After all, his loyal audience had been waiting from morning until afternoon. Old Gua checked his attire and looked in the mirror, making sure no Zheng characters were visible. But he always felt that both his wife and the tea house owner looked at him rather strangely. He didn't know what was odd about it. Even bearing the Zheng character, Old Gua still energetically continued his storytelling, and although someone cursed and attempted to hit him during the session, as soon as Old Gua started his story, everyone got deeply engrossed again. Meanwhile, in Yuzhu Villa, Feng Linger came out of Duan Yun's room and was met with the unfriendly eyes of Shining and the Morong brothers. Feng Linger couldn't help but say, "Why are you all looking at me? I just asked little Duan to remove a mole for me." Shan Ying retorted, "How ugly must the mole on the inside of your thigh be, that you're so anxious to have him remove it?" Morong brothers turned pale and said, "Exactly. Our body and skin are gifts from our parents. Sister, small moles don't affect beauty. Don't bother Dr. Duan unnecessarily. Besides, men and women should be distinguished." He added another sentence. Feng Linger didn't care and said, "Why are you guys worried about me and little Duan Divine Doctor? I'll think again and see if I need to remove the mole." Shen Ying's face turned pale. Morong, with a frightened look, said, "Sister, please don't do this. Really, don't do this." Feng Linger sneered and said, "Why shouldn't I? I want little Duan Divine Doctor to make me flawless, and it's not like I haven't paid." Morong scolded, "If you mess around, I won't agree. I'll tell father." Feng Linger disdainfully glanced at Morong and said, "Let's not even mention why old man Morong and you, the only son of the Morong family, should have any say over me. At your age, still thinking about tattling. Morong, I really used to think highly of you." While speaking, she emphasized the word "only son" to highlight the irresponsibility of the Morong family head. "I." Before Morong could finish, Feng Linger had already mimicked Shen Ying's manner from the other day, walking away with a graceful lotus step. It was as if missing a mole on the inner thigh made her seem even more womanly. Shining glanced at Morong and grumbled, "You're really useless. Can't even manage a sister." Morong felt extremely bitter inside, reflecting on his recent image. Even more bitter. His half-sister from the same father, once hating him enough to want to kill him, now no longer seeks his death but despises him. He cares about her, but she won't listen and he can only bring up their father. As a result, both father and son are belittled. To think that I, Morong, am considered the most handsome and debonair figure in 3 generations of the Morong family, yet to be looked down on like this. Old Demon Duan, I order you to remove all scars from my body immediately. Not a single one left. After Old Gua finished storytelling, night had fallen. Perhaps because he had suddenly disappeared for half a day, it stimulated the audience who really seemed voracious today, continuously asking for more sessions. And his tip money had more than doubled. Such is the charm of storytelling. The sense of achievement in storytelling surged, giving Old Gua a feeling of floating on cloud 9. Trying to mess with me, yet I, Old Gua, turned misfortune into a blessing. His storytelling career progressed even further. Old Gua was in high spirits, bought some roasted meats and rice wine, planning to have them as a midnight snack. Having been scared today, he nonetheless reaped more, worth celebrating with good food and drink. However, when he turned into an alley, he was suddenly grabbed. "What are you doing?" Old Gua said in panic. "You, a storyteller, with such tender skin and sparkling eyes, who are you trying to seduce up there?" One of the men said grimly. Old Gua was suddenly shocked and said, "What are you trying to do?" At that moment, someone was already removing his clothes. "What do you think?" the man retorted. "I'm at a ripe age." Old Gua broke out in a cold sweat and said in panic. At this moment, he realized what was odd about him. Apart from the word righteous on his body, his appearance hadn't changed much, but in fact, it had become softer. Fine skin and tender flesh. This person claimed he had fine skin and tender flesh, a middle-aged male storyteller who, except for the righteous word on his body, had actually become softer. "Brother, his legs are also full of words," said a younger man, pulling down his pants. "This creature, still pretending to be decent. No, don't. Ah!" In the alley at night, Old Gua's screams could be heard. These screams bore a resemblance to those from a broken leg before, yet they were slightly different. The next day, Old Gua didn't come to tell stories. The tea house owner rushed to find him, only to see Old Gua lying on the bed, weakly saying, "Shopkeeper, I really can't do it today." "What happened?" the tea house owner asked concernedly. "It hurts. My butt hurts."